Hello and thank you for joining for tonight's stories. I hope you enjoy. The Rhinelander Pact. The package arrived on a Tuesday in October, when the maples were burning red and the air smelled of wood smoke and impending winter. Lana Mercer found it on her desk at the University of Wisconsin, Madison, nestled between a stack of ungraded papers and a coffee cup that had developed its own ecosystem. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine with no return address. The postmark read Rhinelander, W.I. Lana didn't know anyone in Rhinelander. She opened it carefully, using her letter opener, her archaeologist's instincts warring with her forensic ecologist's caution. Inside the wrapping was a wooden box, old, the wood dark with age and oil. The lid was carved with a pattern she didn't recognize, something like a bull, but wrong, with too many horns and a tail that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at it. She opened the box. Inside, nestled in velvet the color of dried blood, was a claw. It was 6 inches long, curved like a scythe, blackened with age but still sharp enough to draw blood. It wasn't fossilized, not completely. There was still organic material there, still DNA to be extracted, but it was old, very old. Beneath the claw were newspaper clippings, yellowed, fragile, dated 1893. The headlines screamed about the Hadag, the monster of Rhinelander, the beast that Eugene Shepard had captured and displayed to the world. And beneath the clippings, a note, handwritten in ink that looked disturbingly fresh. It wasn't a hoax, they lied to us, and now they're coming back. Lana stared at the claw, at the note, at the carved box. She had spent 15 years studying cryptids, debunking hoaxes, separating fact from folklore. She had seen hundreds of monster artifacts, all fakes, all imagination, all wishful thinking. But this... She picked up the claw. It was heavy, denser than it should be, and warm. Warm, as if it had been alive moments ago. "What are you?" she whispered. The claw didn't answer, but somewhere in the distance, a dog began to howl. 3 days later, Lana was driving north on Highway 51, the claw secured in her trunk, the newspaper clippings spread across her passenger seat. She had done her research. She knew the story of the Hadag. In 1893, Eugene Shepard, a lumberjack and prankster, had announced that he had captured a terrible beast in the woods near Rhinelander. He described it as the fiercest, strangest, most frightening monster ever to set razor claws on the earth. He claimed it had the head of a frog, the grinning face of a giant elephant, thick short legs set off by huge claws, the back of a dinosaur, and a long tail with spears at the end. He had displayed the creature, or a convincing replica, at the Oneida County Fair. Thousands had come to see it. And then, when the crowds grew too large and the questions too pointed, Shepard claimed he had destroyed the beast with dynamite. The Hadag became a legend, a hoax, a joke. The town of Rhinelander embraced it, putting the creature on their seal, selling Hadag merchandise, holding an annual festival. It was good for business, good for tourism. But the official story had never made sense to Lana. Why would Shepard, a known prankster, go to such elaborate lengths? Why the dynamite, so convenient, so final? And why did people keep disappearing in the Rhinelander woods every 30 years like clockwork? She had found the pattern in old newspaper archives. 1893, the year of the capture. 1923, 3 lumberjacks vanished. 1953, a family of 5 camping. 1983, 2 college students. 2013, a solo hiker never found. Every 30 years, almost to the day. And now, 2023, the claw had arrived just in time for the next cycle. Lana pulled into Rhinelander at dusk, the town welcoming her with a 20-foot Hadag statue that grinned down from a pedestal in the town square. The creature was painted bright green, with cartoonish eyes and a friendly expression. Nothing like the thing in the newspaper clippings, with its sharp teeth and hungry eyes. She checked into the Hadag Inn, of course, and spent the evening walking the streets, feeling out the town. It was charming in a rustic Wisconsin way. Log cabin architecture, friendly locals, the smell of pine and lake water, and everywhere the hot egg. Hot egg t-shirts, hot egg coffee mugs, hot egg keychains, hot egg burgers at the local diner. The creature had been transformed from a monster into a mascot, from something to fear into something to sell. But Lana noticed the older residents, the ones who had lived through 1983, 1953. They didn't smile when they talked about the hot egg. They changed the subject. They looked away. Something had happened here, something they didn't want to remember. She found Elias Vance, not the same Elias from Colchester, but a local man with the same haunted eyes, in a bar on the edge of town. He was in his 70s, a retired logger with hands like claws and a voice like gravel. "You're the professor," he said when she sat down, "the one asking questions." "I am." "You should stop." "I can't." She slid the wooden box across the table. "I received this 3 days ago, no return address." Elias looked at the box but didn't touch it. His face went gray. "Where did you get this?" "It was sent to me, at the university." "Impossible." But his voice said it wasn't impossible. His voice said it was inevitable. "Tell me about the hot egg," Lana said. "The real hot egg, not the mascot." Elias was silent for a long time. He stared into his beer, his jaw working. Finally, he said, "My grandfather was on Shepard's crew, the dynamite crew. He told me the truth before he died." "Which was?" "They never killed it." Elias looked up, his eyes bright with old fear. "The dynamite was a lie, a cover story. Shepard made a deal." "What kind of deal?" "The hot egg was real, is real. It lives in the woods, has lived there forever, maybe longer than people. Shepard found its den, found the creature sleeping. He was going to kill it, stake his claim, be a hero, but it woke up, and it spoke to him." "Spoke?" "In his mind, in his dreams, it told him. It told him it could make him rich, famous, the most famous man in Wisconsin. All he had to do was bring it food." "Food?" "People." Elias' voice dropped to a whisper. "It wanted people, not many, just enough to sustain it. One every 30 years. In exchange, it would let Shepard display it, let him become famous, let the town prosper." "And Shepard agreed." "Shepard agreed." Elias drained his beer. "He staged the capture, the display, the dynamite, and every 30 years someone goes into the woods and doesn't come back. The hot egg feeds. The town grows rich. The cycle continues." "That's insane," Lana said, but she was thinking of the claw warm in its box, of the pattern of disappearances, of the note, "They're coming back." "It's insane," Elias agreed. "But it's true, and it's almost time again, 2023, the next feeding." "Who decides who gets sacrificed?" Elias laughed, a bitter sound. "The sheriff. It's always been the sheriff. The Shepard family controlled it for generations. Now it's the Vance family, my family." "Your family?" "My nephew is sheriff. He doesn't know the truth, or he pretends not to, but he'll do his duty when the time comes. They always do." Lana sat back, her mind reeling. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone sent you that claw. Someone wants the truth to come out, and because—" Elias hesitated. "Because I think it's getting worse. The last time in 2013 the hot egg took more than one. It took 3. And it was hungry, still hungry. I think the deal is breaking down. I think it's waking up." "And if it wakes up?" Elias met her eyes. "Then Rhinelander burns." Lana spent the next 2 days researching, interviewing, digging through archives. She found the evidence Elias had promised, the disappearances, the pattern, the connection to the Shepard family and the sheriff's office. She found old journals, letters, records that shouldn't exist, all pointing to the same impossible truth. The hot egg was real. And it was waking up. On the 3rd day, she met with Sheriff Daniel Vance, Elias' nephew. He was younger than she expected, mid-40s, with the same sharp features as his uncle but none of the fear. He smiled easily, shook her hand, offered her coffee. "Professor Mercer," he said, "I've heard you're asking questions about our local legend." "I am. The hot egg is a hoax, has been since 1893. Eugene Shepard admitted it before he died." "Did he?" Lana opened her folder. "Because I found a deathbed confession, not to the hoax, to the truth. He said he made a deal with the devil, Sheriff, a deal that required payment every 30 years. Daniel's smile didn't waver, but something in his eyes went cold. Old stories, superstition. Then, why did 3 people disappear in 2013? Why did 5 disappear in 1983? Why does the pattern go back to 1893? Coincidence?" "And the claw," Lana pulled out the box, opened it. "I had this carbon dated. It's not 1893. It's not even close. This claw is 15,000 years old." Daniel looked at the claw. For just a moment his composure cracked. "Where did you get that?" "It was sent to me, by someone who wants the truth known." "You should leave that alone." Daniel's voice was soft now, almost gentle. "Some things are better left buried." "People are going to die, Sheriff, unless we stop it." "People always die," Daniel stood up. "But the town survives, that's the deal, that's always been the deal." He moved to the door, then stopped. "You have 3 days, Professor. The festival starts Friday. The Hot Egg Days Festival. Thousands of people in town, easy prey." "You're warning me." "I'm telling you to leave before you become part of the payment." He looked back, and for just a moment Lana saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear his uncle had. "It's not just the hot egg anymore. It's there." "They're what?" "Multiplying." Daniel's voice was barely audible. "The deal was for 1, but there are more now, many more, and they're hungry." He left. Lana sat in the empty office, the claw warm in her hand, and knew she was running out of time. The festival was in 3 days. And the hot egg was waking up. She found Elias at his cabin on the edge of town, a rough-hewn building surrounded by pines that seemed to lean away from it, as if afraid. "Your nephew told me," she said without preamble, "about the multiplication, about them getting stronger." Elias nodded, unsurprised. "I wondered when he'd crack. He's been holding it in for years." "What does it mean, multiplying?" "It means the hot egg is breeding, or splitting, or, I don't know, but there are more of them now in the woods, in the caves, waiting." "How do we stop them?" "We don't." Elias poured 2 glasses of whiskey, pushed one toward her. "We never could. The best we can do is delay. Feed them enough to keep them quiet, hope they go back to sleep." "That's not good enough." "It's all we have." Lana drank the whiskey, feeling it burn. "There has to be another way. Every creature has a weakness." "The hot egg," Elias laughed. "It's a force of nature. It's been here since before humans. It doesn't have weaknesses, it just is." "Everything has a weakness." Elias was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Shepard's journal. He kept a journal, hidden in his old sawmill before it burned down. If there was a weakness, he would have written it there." The sawmill burned down. In 1923, convenient timing, don't you think? Right after the first feeding, someone wanted those secrets destroyed. "But you know where it is, where the journal would have been." Elias nodded slowly. "I know, but it's dangerous. The woods aren't safe, not anymore." "Take me there." "It's a 3-hour hike, into the deep woods, the hot egg's territory." "Take me there." Elias looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something that made him nod. "All right, but we go armed, and we don't stay after dark." "Agreed." They left at dawn the next morning, hiking into the forest that surrounded Rhinelander. The trees were ancient here, old-growth pines that blocked the sun, creating a perpetual twilight. The air was cold and smelled of pine resin and something else, something musky and organic that made Lana think of zoos and wet fur. "The Hadag's scent," Elias said when she mentioned it. "It marks its territory, lets others know this is its hunting ground." "Others?" "There are things in these woods older than the Hadag, things that even it fears." They walked for hours, the trail growing fainter, the trees growing closer. Lana's legs ached, her lungs burned, but she didn't complain. She was close, close to the truth, close to understanding. They reached the sawmill ruins at noon. It was just foundations now, stone walls half covered in moss and vines, the remains of a chimney standing like a broken finger. But in the center, protected by the walls, was a stone structure, a vault, a safe. "Shepherd built it to last," Elias said. "Fireproof, waterproof, Hadag-proof," he hoped. The door was rusted but intact. It took both of them to pry it open, their muscles straining, metal screaming. Finally, with a sound like a dying breath, it gave way. Inside was a single object, a leather journal wrapped in oilcloth, preserved against time. Lana reached for it and heard the scream. It came from the woods, high and terrible, like a bull being slaughtered mixed with something else, something that sounded almost human. The ground shook. Birds erupted from the trees in a panic. "It's here," Elias whispered. "It knows." "Take the journal," Lana said, shoving it into her pack. "Run." They ran. Through the woods, branches whipping their faces, roots tripping their feet. Behind them, something crashed through the trees, something heavy and fast and hungry. Lana didn't look back. She couldn't. She just ran, her lungs burning, her legs screaming, the journal heavy on her back. They burst from the tree line into a clearing, a small lake glittering in the afternoon sun. Elias stumbled, fell, and Lana stopped to help him up. "Go," he gasped. "Leave me, get the journal to town." "No." "Lana, I'm old, I'm slow. I'll just slow you down." "Then I'll slow down with you." The thing burst from the trees. Lana had seen the statue in town, the cartoon Hadag with its friendly grin. She had seen the newspaper drawings, the exaggerated features. Nothing prepared her for the reality. It was massive, 8 feet tall at the shoulder, built like a bear but wrong in every way. Its head was frog-like, broad and flat, with a mouth that opened sideways and teeth like shards of glass. Its eyes, there were too many eyes, 6 of them, arranged in a circle, glowed with a phosphorescent green light. The body was covered in scales, not fur, dark green and mottled with brown. The legs were short, thick, ending in claws like the one in her pack but larger, sharper. And the tail, the tail was long as a man, tipped with bony protrusions that looked like spears. It was beautiful and terrible and ancient. It was the Hadag. It roared, a sound that shook the ground, and charged. Lana grabbed Elias and threw them both into the lake, the cold water shocking her system. They went under, deep, swimming for the far shore. Above them, the water churned as the Hadag followed. They surfaced on the far side, gasping, scrambling onto the bank. The Hadag was already there, waiting, its many eyes fixed on them. "The journal," Elias gasped. "Read it, find the weakness." "I can't." "Read it." The Hadag lunged and stopped. Something was happening to it. It was shaking, convulsing, its scales flaking off in patches. It made a sound like a scream, but higher, almost like laughter. No, not laughter, pain. It was burning. Steam rose from its scales, and the smell, the smell, was like sulfur and burning sugar. "What?" Lana stared. "The water," Elias said, understanding dawning. "It's the water, the lake water, it's—" He didn't finish. The Hadag, wounded but not defeated, turned and crashed back into the woods, leaving them alone on the shore. They lay there for a long time, gasping, shaking. Finally, Lana reached for her pack. The journal was wet but intact. She opened it and began to read. Eugene Shepherd's handwriting was cramped, frantic. the writing of a man who had seen something that broke his mind. But the words were clear enough. The hot egg is not a beast. It is a guardian, a protector of the forest. It feeds on those who threaten the balance, who take too much, who destroy without giving back. But it can be negotiated with, appeased. The weakness is in the blood. The hot egg's blood is like acid, burning everything it touches. But there is something that neutralizes it, something pure, something sweet. Maple syrup. Lana looked up at Elias. Maple syrup. Elias laughed, a hysterical sound. Of course, the sugar, the purity, it counteracts the acid, it pacifies them. That's why the town is famous for maple syrup, why every restaurant serves it, why the festival. The festival, Elia's face went gray. The Hot Egg Days Festival, they serve maple syrup on everything. Pancakes, waffles, ice cream. It's not just tradition, it's protection. And the sacrifices. The ones who don't eat the syrup, the outsiders, the ones who refuse. Lana thought of the thousands of people who would come to the festival, the tourists, the outsiders, the ones who didn't know. We have to warn them, she said. We have to tell them to eat the syrup. They won't listen, they'll think we're crazy. Then we have to stop the hot egg before it can hunt. Elias shook his head. You can't stop it, you can only appease it, feed it, keep it quiet. Then we change the deal. Lana stood up, the journal clutched in her hand. We find another way. She looked at the woods, dark and deep and full of secrets. The hot egg was in there somewhere, wounded, angry, hungry. And it was almost time to feed. The festival started tomorrow. And Lana Mercer was going to be ready. The Hot Egg Days Festival began with a parade. Lana watched from the crowd as floats rolled down the main street, each one more elaborate than the last. There were lumberjack floats, historical floats, floats celebrating the town's heritage, and everywhere the hot egg. Green costumes, green balloons, green face paint. The creature had been transformed into a mascot, a symbol, a reason to celebrate. No one seemed to remember that it was real, that it was hungry, that it was waiting in the woods. She had spent the night reading Shepard's journal, learning everything she could. The hot egg wasn't just one creature. It was a species, ancient and patient. They lived in the caves beneath the town, emerging every 30 years to feed. The deal Shepard had made wasn't with one monster, it was with the entire colony. And now something was wrong. The journal's later entries grew increasingly frantic. They're waking early, Shepard had written. The deal is breaking, they want more, they want everything. The last entry, dated 1923, read simply, I was wrong, God forgive me. Then the sawmill had burned, and Shepard had died, and the secret had been buried with him. Until now. Lana found Elias at the pancake breakfast, a massive tent set up in the town square where volunteers served endless stacks of pancakes drenched in maple syrup. The smell was overwhelming, sweet and thick. Protection, Elias said, gesturing at the syrup. Everyone who eats is marked, safe for now. And those who don't. Elias' eyes found a group of teenagers at the edge of the tent, eating donuts from a convenience store, laughing, oblivious. They're the ones who disappear, every time. The outsiders who don't know the tradition, the ones who think it's just a story. We need to get them to eat the syrup. How? Tell them a monster will eat them if they don't. They'll think we're insane. Then we find another way. Lana looked around the festival at the thousands of people gathered. The sheriff knows, your nephew, he can help. Daniel won't help, he's part of the system, he maintains the pact. Even if it means people die. Especially then, Elias' voice was bitter. The deal requires sacrifice, always has, the many protected by the few, it's pragmatic. It's murder. It's survival. They argued for an hour, getting nowhere. The festival continued around them, music playing, children laughing, the smell of syrup thick in the air. It was surreal, this celebration of a monster, this willful blindness to the danger. And then the first scream came. It was distant from the edge of town near the woods, but it was unmistakable, a scream of pure terror cut off abruptly. The music stopped. People looked around, confused. Then the radio crackled. Lana heard it from a police car nearby, the dispatcher's voice sharp and frightened. "All units, we have a 1054 near the old logging road. Possible animal attack. Repeat, possible animal attack." The crowd began to murmur. Parents grabbed their children. Vendors started packing up. "It started," Elias whispered. "Early. It's never started during the festival before." "We need to get to the logging road," Lana said. "Now." They ran, pushing through the crowd toward the sound of sirens. Police cars were already there, lights flashing, officers standing with weapons drawn. Lana pushed past them. The scene was wrong. There was no body, no blood, no sign of struggle, just a backpack lying in the dirt and a smell. That musky animal smell, stronger than ever. And something else, something sweet. Lana picked up the backpack. It was a hiker's pack, expensive, well-worn. The name tag read Sarah Chen. Inside, carefully packed, were bottles of water, energy bars, a first aid kit, and 3 bottles of maple syrup. Unopened. "She didn't eat," Lana said. "She didn't know." "None of them know," Elias said. "That's how it works. The outsiders come, they don't eat the syrup, they become available. We have to warn everyone, now." But it was too late. More screams were coming from different directions now. The woods were alive with movement, with shadows too large to be deer, with sounds too deep to be human. The Hodeg was hunting, and it wasn't alone. Sheriff Daniel Vance found them an hour later, his face pale, his hands shaking. 3 more, he said. All hikers, all outsiders, all gone. "You knew this would happen," Lana accused. "You knew and you did nothing." "What could I do? Cancel the festival, evacuate the town, tell them the truth?" Daniel laughed, hysterical. "They'd think I was crazy, I'd be removed from office, and the Hodeg would still hunt. It always hunts. Then we stop it. We find the caves, we destroy the nest, we end this." "You can't end it. It's been here for thousands of years. It will be here for thousands more." "Then we change the terms." Lana pulled out Shepard's journal. "The weakness is the syrup. It pacifies them. But what if we used it differently? What if we weaponized it?" "Weaponized?" Shepard wrote about it. "The Hodeg's blood is acidic. It burns, but the syrup neutralizes it. What if we could overdose them, force them to consume too much? They'd die. Or sleep, or, I don't know, but it's better than doing nothing." Daniel looked at the journal, at Lana, at the woods where his town was being hunted. "The caves," he said finally. "I know where they are, the entrance. I've never been inside, but I can show you." "When?" "Tonight, after dark, when the festival ends and the Hodeg returns to its nest." "It might be too late by then." "It's already too late." Daniel's voice was hollow. "But maybe we can save the next cycle." They waited. The festival continued, hollow now, the joy gone from it. People knew something was wrong. They could feel it in the air, smell it in the wind. But they didn't know what. They ate their syrup-drenched pancakes and pretended everything was fine. As the sun set, Lana, Elias, and Daniel gathered at the edge of town near the woods. They had supplies, flashlights, rope, the journal, and as much maple syrup as they could carry. Gallons of it. "The entrance is 2 miles in," Daniel said. "A sinkhole hidden by brush. The Hodeg uses it to come and go." "And inside?" "I don't know. No one's ever gone in and come out." "Then we'll be the first." They entered the woods as the last light faded, the darkness swallowing them. The forest was different at night, alive in ways that weren't natural. Shadows moved between the trees. Sounds echoed that had no source. And that smell, That terrible musky smell. They reached the sinkhole after an hour of hiking. It was exactly as Daniel had described, a pit in the earth, hidden by fallen logs and thick brush, large enough for a man to enter, large enough for a Hadeg to exit. We go down, Lana said. We find the nest, we pour the syrup, we burn them out. Simple, Elias said dryly. Nothing about this is simple, but it's necessary. They tied ropes to trees and descended into the darkness. The air grew colder, wetter, the smell stronger. Lana's flashlight beam cut through the dark, revealing walls of stone and earth, passages leading in every direction. A cave system, massive, ancient. This way, Daniel whispered, pointing. I can feel it. Feel what? Them there, close. They moved through the tunnels, the passages twisting and turning, branching and rejoining. It was a maze, a labyrinth designed to confuse and trap. But Daniel seemed to know the way, guided by some instinct Lana didn't understand. How do you know where to go? She asked. I don't, it knows. Daniel touched his chest. The pact, it's in my blood, my family's blood, it calls to me. That's insane. Everything about this is insane. They reached a chamber and stopped. It was massive, larger than a cathedral, the ceiling lost in shadow, and it was filled with bones. Human bones, animal bones, piled high against the walls, arranged in patterns, some fresh, some ancient, all of them stripped clean. And in the center, arranged in a circle like petals around a flower, were the Hadegs. There were 7 of them, adults massive, their scales gleaming in the phosphorescent light that seemed to come from their own bodies. They were sleeping, curled around each other, their many eyes closed. But they weren't alone. In the center of the circle, bound and gagged but still alive, were the missing hikers, Sarah Chen and 2 others. Their eyes were wide with terror, their mouths working against their bonds. We have to help them, Lana whispered. We will. Elias was already moving, circling the chamber, the syrup cans in his hands. But quietly, we don't want to wake them. They moved like shadows, pouring syrup in lines around the sleeping creatures, creating a barrier, a trap. The plan was simple. Douse the Hadegs, ignite the syrup, burn them while they slept. But nothing was ever simple. Lana reached the hostages, began working on their bonds. Sarah Chen's eyes met hers, grateful, desperate. Thank you, the hiker mouthed. Lana nodded, her fingers working the knots. Almost there, almost. The Hadeg's eyes opened. All of them, at once. 42 eyes, glowing green in the darkness, fixing on Lana with an intelligence that was ancient and hungry. Run, Daniel screamed. But there was nowhere to run. The Hadegs were awake, rising, their massive bodies uncoiling, their claws scraping on stone. The syrup, Lana shouted, now. Elias threw his match. The syrup caught, a wall of flame springing up around the creatures. They screamed, that terrible, bull-like scream, and retreated from the fire. But they didn't die, they didn't even seem hurt, just annoyed. It's not enough, Daniel said. We need more. Then we give them more. Lana grabbed a syrup can and ran toward the nearest Hadeg. It was smaller than the others, a juvenile maybe, and it hesitated as she approached. Eat this, she snarled, and threw the syrup in its face. The creature screamed, a different sound now, higher, pained. The syrup was burning it, eating into its scales, the sugar reacting with the acid blood. It worked. The syrup, Lana shouted. It hurts them, throw it on them. They attacked, all 3 of them, throwing syrup, dousing the creatures. The Hadegs screamed and thrashed, their perfect forms dissolving where the syrup touched, scales flaking, flesh bubbling. But there were too many, and they were waking the others. From the depths of the cave, more shadows moved, more eyes glowed. The entire colony was rising, drawn by the screams of their kin. We have to go, Daniel said, grabbing Lana's arm. Now. The hostages. Leave them, they're already dead. He was right. The Hodags were recovering, shaking off the syrup, advancing. The hostages were surrounded, beyond reach. I'm sorry, Lana whispered, then she ran. They ran through the tunnels, the Hodags behind them, the ground shaking with their pursuit. The passages that had seemed confusing before were clear now, adrenaline and terror providing perfect direction. They burst from the sinkhole into the night air, gasping, stumbling. The woods were alive with movement, with screams, with the sounds of hunting. The town, Elias gasped. They're going for the town. We have to warn them. How? They won't believe us. Then we make them believe. They ran for Rhinelander, for the lights and the people and the false safety of the festival. Behind them, the woods erupted with shadows, with screams, with the sounds of ancient hunger. The Hodag Days festival was about to become something else entirely. A massacre, unless they could stop it. Rhinelander was burning. Not literally, not yet, but the panic was spreading like wildfire. People were running through the streets, screaming, pointing at the woods where shadows moved with impossible speed. The festival had collapsed into chaos, tents overturned, food abandoned, children crying. Lana, Elias, and Daniel burst into the town square, gasping for breath. Listen to me, Lana shouted, climbing onto a stage, grabbing a microphone. Everyone, listen, the Hodag is real, it's in the woods, it's coming. The crowd stared at her. Some laughed, most looked confused. She's crazy, someone shouted. No, Lana pointed at the woods. Look at the trees. They looked and they saw. The trees were moving, not swaying in the wind, moving, bending, breaking. Something massive was pushing through them, something that shouldn't exist. My God, someone whispered. The syrup, Lana shouted. You need to eat the maple syrup, it protects you, it. The first Hodag burst from the tree line. It was massive, larger than the ones in the cave, its scales black in the moonlight, its many eyes glowing like lanterns. It roared, that terrible bull scream, and the crowd panicked. People ran, screamed, trampled each other. The Hodag lunged, claws flashing, and a man went down, his scream cut short. No, Daniel drew his weapon, fired. The bullets sparked off the creature's scales, doing nothing. The syrup, Lana screamed. Pour it on them, it burns them. She grabbed a bottle from a nearby vendor, pure maple syrup, grade A, the good stuff, and threw it at the Hodag. It shattered against the creature's flank, and where it touched, the scales smoked, bubbled, peeled away. The Hodag screamed and retreated, shaking its head, trying to dislodge the burning liquid. It works, Elias grabbed bottles, threw them. Everyone used the syrup. The crowd, desperate, followed their lead. Bottles flew through the air, shattering against the creatures, coating them in sticky sweetness that burned like acid. The Hodag screamed, thrashed, retreated, but there were more coming, dozens of them. The entire colony awakened, angry, hungry. We can't hold them off forever, Daniel said, reloading. We need to end this. The caves, Lana said. We go back, we destroy the nest. That's suicide. It's the only way. She grabbed his arm. The pact, you said it's in your blood. Can you use it? Can you command them? I don't know. I've never tried. Try. Daniel closed his eyes. He stood in the center of the chaos, the screaming, the burning, and he reached for something inside himself. Something old. Something that had been passed down through generations. Stop, he whispered. The Hodags paused. Just for a moment they stopped their attack, their many eyes fixing on him. I am Vance, Daniel shouted, his voice carrying over the din. Son of Shepherd, keeper of the pact, you will stop. You will return to your nest. You will sleep. The Hodags tilted their heads, considering. Then the largest one, the matriarch, Lana realized, roared and lunged. It didn't work, Elias screamed. The deal is broken, Daniel stumbled back. They've broken the pact, they want more, they want everything. Then we give them everything. Lana looked around, desperate, and saw the tanker truck, the one parked by the pancake tent, the one that had been delivering syrup all day. It was still half full. "The truck," she shouted. "We need to get it to the caves." "How?" "We drive it." They ran, the three of them dodging claws and teeth, fighting through the chaos. The Hodegs were everywhere now, hunting, killing, but the crowd was fighting back, armed with bottles and courage and desperation. They reached the truck. The keys were in the ignition. The driver had fled, abandoning it. "I'll drive," Daniel said. "You two get in the back." "Daniel." "I'm the sheriff. It's my town, my responsibility." He met her eyes. "Get in the back." They climbed into the tank, the sticky syrup already coating their shoes, their hands. Daniel started the engine, the truck roaring to life. "Hold on," he shouted and floored it. The truck plowed through the chaos, crushing tents and tables, scattering people and monsters alike. The Hodegs tried to stop it, clawing at the sides, but the metal held. They reached the woods. The trees were too close, the path too narrow, but Daniel didn't slow down. He drove like a madman, branches scraping the sides, the truck bouncing over roots and rocks. "The sinkhole," Elias shouted. "There." Daniel saw it. He aimed for it. He floored the accelerator. "Jump," he screamed. Lana and Elias leaped from the tank, rolling on the forest floor, the truck continuing on without them. It hit the sinkhole, teetered on the edge, and then... Daniel looked back just for a moment. He met Lana's eyes. And he smiled. The truck tipped forward, plunging into the darkness, into the caves, into the nest. The explosion was massive. The tanker ruptured, the syrup igniting, the fire spreading through the tunnels, through the chambers, through the entire warren. The Hodegs screamed, all of them everywhere, a chorus of agony that shook the earth. Lana watched from the forest floor as flames erupted from the sinkhole, as the ground shook, as the screams faded and died. The caves collapsed, the warren was destroyed. And Daniel Vance was gone. They found the crater the next morning. It was massive, 100 feet across. The earth collapsed in on itself. Steam still rose from the depths, and the smell, syrup and sulfur and burning meat, was overwhelming. Search teams went in. They found bones, hundreds of them, human and animal, piled deep, some fresh, some ancient. They found the remains of the Hodegs, 7 of them, the adults, burned beyond recognition, and dozens more, juveniles, eggs, things that might have been fetuses. The colony was destroyed. But they didn't find Daniel. His body was never recovered, swallowed by the earth, they said, consumed by the fire. Lana stood at the edge of the crater, Elias beside her, and felt the weight of what they had done. They had saved the town, stopped the cycle, broken the pact. But at what cost? He knew, Elias said quietly. He knew he wouldn't make it out. He sacrificed himself. He redeemed his family. 4 generations of keeping the pact, of feeding the monster. He ended it. Did he? Lana looked at the crater. Or did we just delay it? Elias didn't answer. They both knew the truth. The Hodegs were ancient. They had survived ice ages, meteor strikes, the rise and fall of civilizations. A fire wouldn't destroy them, not completely. But it would buy time, decades, maybe centuries. Time for the town to prepare, time for the next generation to learn, time for the truth to be told. The memorial service was held a week later. The town gathered in the square before the Hodeg statue to honor the dead. The victims of the attack, 6 people, including the 3 hikers, the heroes who had fought back, and Daniel Vance, the sheriff who had given his life to save them all. Lana spoke at the service. She told the truth, most of it. She talked about the Hodeg as a real creature, an ancient predator that had hunted the woods for millennia. She talked about the pact, the deal, the sacrifices. She talked about Daniel's courage, his sacrifice, his redemption. Some believed her, most didn't. The official story was gas explosion, wild animal attack, tragic accident. The hot egg went back to being a mascot, a legend, a joke. But things were different now. The town held the festival every year, but now everyone ate the syrup. Now everyone knew or suspected the truth. The pact was broken, but the tradition remained. Protection through ritual, safety through sweetness. Lana stayed in Rhinelander for a month, helping with the cleanup, documenting everything. She wrote a paper, submitted it to journals, was rejected by all of them. Too fantastic, too unbelievable. She didn't care, she knew the truth. And she had the journal, the claw, the evidence. On her last day, she visited Elias at his cabin. The old man looked tired but peaceful, the weight of generations finally lifted from his shoulders. "What will you do now?" he asked. "Keep looking. There are other legends, other monsters. The hot egg wasn't the only one." "No," Elias agreed, "it wasn't." "Will you be okay?" Elias smiled. "I have my memories, my ghosts, but yes, I'll be okay." He paused. "Take care, Professor, and remember, some pacts don't end, they just wait." Lana left Rhinelander the next morning, driving south through the autumn woods. The leaves were falling, the air was crisp, and the world seemed normal. But she knew better now. She knew what lurked in the shadows, what slept in the caves, what waited in the dark. She stopped at a diner just outside Madison, ordered pancakes with extra syrup. The waitress smiled, poured the golden liquid. "Our specialty," she said. "Wisconsin maple, best in the world." Lana ate slowly, savoring the sweetness, feeling the protection spread through her. It was silly, superstitious, but it was also real. She was almost to her car when she saw it. In the parking lot near the dumpster, something was eating, something with three-toed claws. She approached slowly, quietly. It was a badger, or had been. Its body was torn open, the flesh stripped away, the bones cracked. And the tracks leading away. 3 toes clawed large. Lana followed them to the edge of the woods. The tracks disappeared into the underbrush, but she could see where they led, deeper, into the dark. She stood there for a long time, the claw in her pocket warm against her hip, and thought about what it meant. The hot egg was destroyed, the colony burned, the pact broken. But there were others, there were always others. Some pacts don't end, they just wait. And somewhere in the woods something was watching her, something hungry, something patient. Lana turned and walked back to her car. She didn't run, she didn't look back. But she drove faster than she should have, and she didn't stop until she reached the city lights. Behind her in the darkness something hummed, something waited. The harvest would continue. Somewhere, sometime. The monsters were eternal. And so was the fight. Epilogue. 1 year later, a new statue appeared in Rhinelander's town square. Next to the hot egg, smiling and green, stood a figure in a sheriff's uniform. The plaque read, "Daniel Vance, Protector, Hero." Children played around both statues, laughing, oblivious. Parents watched from benches, smiling. And in the woods, deep in the caves that had survived the fire, something stirred. Not a hot egg, something older, something worse. The pact with the hot egg had been broken. But there were other pacts, other deals, other monsters. And they were waking up. The cycle continued. The harvest never truly ended. It just waited. The 101st night. The bayou breathed at night, not the gentle respiration of sleep, but something wetter, more labored, like a dying thing struggling to fill its lungs with air too thick to breathe. Renee Thibodeaux had lived in this swamp town of Lacroix Parish for 43 years, had breathed that same heavy air since before he could walk, and still the nights here made the hair on his arms stand at attention. He stood behind the bar of Thibodeaux's Landing, his family's establishment since 1923, polishing the same glass he'd been polishing for 20 minutes. The rag moved in slow, circular motions, catching the dim light from the single bulb that hung above the bar. Outside, The cypress trees swayed in a wind that carried the smell of rotting vegetation, and something else, something coppery and ancient that Renee had learned not to think about too hard. "You're gonna wear a hole in that glass, brother." Renee looked up to find his sister Lisette sliding onto a stool at the far end of the bar. She was 36, 12 years younger than him, and still possessed the kind of beauty that made men do stupid things. Her dark hair fell in loose waves around shoulders wrapped in a shawl that did little to hide the thinness of her frame. She'd been sick last winter, some respiratory infection that had lingered for months, and she'd never quite regained the weight she'd lost. "Didn't expect you tonight," Renee said, setting down the glass and the rag. He reached for the bottle of bourbon he kept under the counter for family. "Thought you were resting." "Can't rest in that house." Lisette accepted the glass he slid toward her, her fingers trembling slightly as they wrapped around the cut crystal. "The walls creak, the floorboards groan, and there's something in the attic that scratches at night." "Squirrels." "Not squirrels." She drank deeply, the amber liquid disappearing in 2 swallows. She set the glass down with a sharp click. "I know what squirrels sound like, Renee. This is different. This is patient." Renee poured her another. The bar was empty except for them. Wednesday nights were slow, and the regulars had cleared out by 10. Now it was nearly midnight, and the darkness outside seemed to press against the windows like something trying to get in. "I need to tell you something," Renee said. His voice had dropped to a whisper, though there was no one to overhear them. "Something I've been carrying for 7 years." Lisette's eyebrows rose. 7 years, that's specific. "It's Lent," Renee said. "Or it was, I don't know anymore." He ran a hand through his thinning hair, feeling the sweat that had gathered at his temples despite the cool evening. "I haven't observed Lent properly in 7 years, not since Daddy died." The silence that followed was broken only by the creak of the building settling, and the distant croak of a bullfrog. "Renee," Lisette said carefully, "you haven't been to Mass since the funeral. I just assumed you'd lapsed." "I did lapse, that's the problem." He leaned across the bar close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath and the fear that seemed to seep from his pores. "I didn't just stop going to church, Lisette. I broke the covenant. I ate meat on Fridays. I didn't fast. I didn't give anything up. I just stopped." "And you think God is punishing you for not giving up chocolate?" Lisette laughed, but the sound died quickly in her throat. There was something in her brother's eyes, something hollow and hunted that she'd never seen before. "Renee, you're scaring me." "Good." He reached across the bar and grabbed her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "You should be scared, because it's not God who's been watching me. It's something else, something that moved into the space I left empty." He told her then, the words spilling out in a rush of confession that felt like lancing a wound. 7 years ago, on the first Friday of Lent, he'd woken to find muddy footprints on his kitchen floor. They were shaped like a man's, but wrong somehow, too long, the toes splayed at impossible angles. He'd cleaned them up, told himself it was a dream. But they came back. Every Friday during Lent they appeared, and then they started appearing on other nights too. Wednesdays, Sundays, every night during Holy Week. "I started seeing it," Renee whispered. "In the trees, in the water. It's tall, taller than a man and thin like a cypress sapling. And its eyes," he shuddered. "Its eyes glow red, Lisette, like embers in a dying fire." Lisette pulled her hand free and stood up from the stool. "You've been drinking too much, working too hard. Grief does strange things to the mind, Renee. Daddy's death has nothing to do with this." Renee's voice cracked. "I saw it tonight, before you came in. It was standing in the parking lot watching the door." "Then why didn't you run? Why didn't you call the police?" "Because it wasn't looking at the door, Lisette. It was looking at me, and it was smiling." Lisette stared at her brother for a long moment, searching his face for any sign of deception or madness. She found neither, only a bone-deep terror that seemed to have aged him 20 years in the space of an evening. "I'm going home," she said finally. and I'm going to pretend this conversation never happened. You're my brother, Renee, and I love you, but you're not well. You need sleep. You need to stop drinking. Lysette. Good night, Renee. She walked out of the bar without looking back, her heels clicking against the wooden floorboards. The bell above the door chimed once, then fell silent. Renee stood alone in the empty bar, listening to the night sounds of the bayou. He waited for the sound of her car starting, but it didn't come. Instead, he heard her footsteps pause just outside the door, heard her sharp intake of breath. Renee, her voice came through the door, thin and trembling. Renee, there's something out here. He was at the door in 3 strides, his hand on the lock. But before he could turn it, he heard her scream, a sound of pure, animal terror that cut off abruptly into silence. When he threw the door open, the parking lot was empty. Lysette's car sat where she'd parked it, the driver's door hanging open. Her purse lay on the ground, its contents spilled across the gravel. And on the hood of her car, arranged in a neat circle, were 13 pennies. Renee stood in the doorway, his heart hammering against his ribs, and stared at the empty darkness beyond the reach of the bar's lights. Somewhere in the cypress trees, something with glowing red eyes watched him back. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in the bar with every light burning, a shotgun across his knees, waiting for dawn. When the sun finally rose, pale and anemic through the morning fog, he drove to Lysette's house. The door was locked, but he had a key. He found her in the kitchen, making coffee as if nothing had happened. Lysette. She turned and smiled at him, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Renee, you look terrible. What happened last night? You screamed you were gone. I don't know what you're talking about. She poured coffee into a mug and held it out to him. I came home and went to bed, that's all. But Renee noticed the scratches on her arms, long, parallel lines that looked almost like they'd been made by fingers. And when she turned to reach for the sugar, he saw the bruises on her neck, dark and finger-shaped. Lysette, he said softly, what did it show you? Her hand froze over the sugar bowl. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, fear, yes, but also wonder. A terrible, awful wonder. The 101st night, she whispered. It showed me the 101st night. Then she blinked, and the moment passed. She was just his sister again, tired and annoyed and worried about his mental health. You're imagining things, Renee. Go home, sleep. We'll talk later. But as he left her house, Renee saw something that made his blood run cold. In the cypress tree outside her bedroom window, half hidden by Spanish moss, something tall and thin was watching him. Its eyes glowed red in the morning light. And it was counting on its fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Renee got in his truck and drove away as fast as the narrow roads would allow. He didn't know what the counting meant, but he knew, with a certainty that settled in his gut like a stone, that he didn't want to find out. That night he placed 13 pennies by his door. And waited. The swamp took Renee Thibodeaux on the 14th night. He woke to the smell of copper and rot, his mouth filled with a taste that made him gag, a thick, metallic flavor that coated his tongue and teeth. His head pounded with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat, and when he tried to sit up, his muscles screamed in protest. He was naked. That was the first thing he noticed. The second was that he was cold, bone-deep, marrow-freezing cold that had nothing to do with the Louisiana spring. The third thing he noticed was that he was in the swamp. Renee pushed himself up from the muddy ground, his hands sinking into muck that smelled of decay. Cypress knees surrounded him like the fingers of drowning men, reaching up from black water that reflected the stars overhead. The moon was full, casting everything in shades of silver and shadow. He didn't remember coming here. The last thing he recalled was sitting in his living room, watching the 13 pennies he'd placed by the door, watching them and waiting for something that never came. Or had it? He looked down at his hands. They were covered in blood, dried and flaking, but unmistakable, And his fingers ended in claws. Not the claws of an animal, but something else. Something that looked like they'd been grown rather than transformed, thick and yellow and curved like crescent moons. Renee screamed then, a sound that echoed through the swamp and was answered by the sudden silence of frogs and insects. He stumbled toward the water's edge, needing to see his reflection, needing to understand what had happened to him. The face that looked back at him from the black mirror of the swamp was his own, but changed. His eyes were wrong, the pupils dilated to pinpricks despite the darkness. And his teeth. He ran his tongue along his teeth and felt the sharp points that hadn't been there yesterday. "What did you do to me?" he screamed at the empty night. "What did you do?" The only answer was the wind in the cypress trees. It took him an hour to find his way home. He moved through the swamp with an ease that terrified him, his feet finding solid ground instinctively, his body slipping between trees with a grace he'd never possessed. The claws retracted as he walked, slowly, painfully, until his hands looked almost normal again. Almost. His clothes were on the porch when he reached his house, a small cabin on the edge of town that had been in the Thibodeaux family for generations. They were folded neatly, as if placed there by caring hands. But there was blood on them too, dark stains that hadn't been there when he'd put them on yesterday. He dressed quickly, his hands shaking so badly he could barely manage the buttons. He needed to find Lisette, needed to make sure she was safe. The thing that had taken him in the night, it could have taken her too. Her house was dark when he arrived, the windows black and empty. He pounded on the door, calling her name, but there was no answer. He used his key and stepped inside. The smell hit him first, that same coppery scent that had filled his mouth when he woke. It was stronger here, concentrated, coming from the back of the house. Lisette. He found her nightgown on the porch. That was all. Just the nightgown, torn down the front, stained with something dark and sticky that smelled of gator and something else, something that made Renee's new teeth ache with hunger. He picked up the fabric with trembling hands. It was still warm. No. He searched the house, the yard, the woods behind her property. He called her phone, heard it ringing from beneath her pillow, untouched. He called the police, but when they arrived, they found nothing. No signs of struggle, no blood except what was on the nightgown, and that could have been anything. "She probably just went for a walk," Deputy Landry said, writing in his little notebook. "You know how she is, Renee, likes her late-night strolls." Her nightgown was torn, there was blood. Could be animal blood, gator maybe, they're moving this time of year. And she just took off her nightgown and went for a walk. Landry shrugged. "People do strange things, we'll keep an eye out." They left him standing on Lisette's porch, the nightgown clutched in his hands like a prayer. Renee knew they wouldn't find her. He knew because he could still smell her, her fear, her sweat, the particular sweetness of her skin. He could smell it on the nightgown, yes, but he could also smell it in the air, fading fast, moving toward the swamp. Toward the thing with red eyes. Renee drove to St. Augustine's Catholic Church, a small wooden building that had served Lacroix Parish for over 100 years. Father Dufresne was in the garden behind the rectory, pulling weeds in the dark. "Father," Renee called, his voice cracking. "Father, I need to confess." The old priest straightened slowly, his joints popping like dry twigs. He was 70 if he was a day, with a face like a weathered cypress stump and eyes that had seen too much of human nature to be surprised by anything. Renee Thibodeaux. Father Dufresne wiped his hands on his cassock, leaving trails of dark earth. "I wondered when you'd come." "You knew." "I know many things." The priest gestured toward the church. "Come, we'll talk inside." The confessional smelled of old wood and incense, of centuries of whispered sins. Renee knelt in the dark, the screen between him and the priest barely visible in the light of a single candle. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 7 years since my last confession." 7 years, Father Dufresne repeated. A significant number, the number of completion, some say, of fullness. I broke Lent, Renee said, the words tumbling out. I stopped observing it. I stopped going to Mass. I stopped believing. And something moved in. It's been watching me. Last night it took me and I woke up in the swamp and my sister is missing and I think I did something terrible. The silence from the other side of the screen stretched for so long that Renee thought the priest had left. Then, you don't confess a curse, boy, you pass it. What? What you've described, it's old magic, older than this church, older than the faith we practice here. It's bayou magic, swamp magic, the kind that lives in the mud and the muck and feeds on broken promises. Father Dufresne's voice was flat, matter of fact. You opened a door when you broke your Lent. You invited something in, and now it's using you. Using me for what? To spread, to multiply, to infect, the priest sighed. These things, they're like viruses, Renee. They need hosts. They need to replicate, and they're patient. They can wait years, decades for the right conditions. How do I stop it? You don't, you pass it. Find someone else to take your place, someone to complete the cycle. I can't do that. I can't curse someone else. Then you'll die, or worse, you'll become fully what it's making you, a vessel, a carrier, and everyone you love will fall to the curse through you. Renee pressed his forehead against the screen. There has to be another way, prayer, exorcism, something. Prayer strengthens the soul, but it doesn't close doors that have been opened. Exorcism works on possession. This is infection, transformation. The church has no power over it because the church didn't create it. This is older, wilder. Father Dufresne paused. There are stories, though, old stories from the Cajun families, ways to delay, to hold it at bay. Tell me. 13 pennies by the door, iron nails in the windows, salt lines and holy water. They'll work for a time, 13 days, 13 nights. But on the 14th night the protection fails. The curse demands to be fed. Renee thought of the 13 pennies he'd placed by his door, thought of waking up in the swamp on the 14th night. It already failed, he whispered. Then it's begun. The priest's voice was gentle, almost kind. I'm sorry, Renee, I truly am, but my advice to you is the same, pass it. Find someone to take your place, someone you don't mind losing. I can't. Then prepare yourself. The 101st night is coming, and when it arrives, the transformation will be complete. Renee left the church with more questions than answers. He drove to Lisette's house and sat in her living room, surrounded by her things, her books, her photographs, the small details of a life interrupted. He waited for her to come home. She never did. But on the 15th night, he heard her voice outside his window, calling his name, begging for help. When he looked, there was nothing there but shadows and the distant glow of red eyes. Counting. Always counting. Renee learned the rules of his curse in the weeks that followed. He couldn't eat normal food anymore, not without vomiting it back up within the hour. The only thing that stayed down was meat, and only if it was raw. He found himself drawn to the butcher's shop, staring at the packages of beef and pork with a hunger that made him ashamed. He stopped sleeping in his bed. Every time he closed his eyes in a room with windows, he woke up somewhere else, in the swamp, in the woods, once in the cemetery behind St. Augustine's. The only place he could sleep safely was the bathtub, curled up like a child, the bathroom door locked and barricaded with furniture. He started seeing things, shadows that moved against the light, figures standing in his peripheral vision that vanished when he turned his head, and always the red eyes in the distance, watching, waiting, counting down the nights. He tried the protections Father Dufresne had mentioned. He placed 13 pennies by his door every evening at sunset. He hammered iron nails into his window frames until the wood splintered. He poured lines of salt across every threshold and kept a spray bottle of holy water in his pocket. They worked. For 13 nights they worked. On the 14th night, he heard it outside his door. At first he thought it was an animal, a raccoon or a possum, drawn by the smell of the raw meat he'd been forced to consume. He heard scratching, then a wet sound like something licking. Then he heard the voice. 12, 12, 12. It was a growl, low and guttural, but unmistakably words. René pressed himself against the far wall of his living room, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. 12, 12, 12. The voice repeated the number over and over, each time sounding more frustrated, more hungry. René could see the pennies through the gap under the door, 13 copper circles glinting in the moonlight. 11, 11, 11. The counting continued, dropping by one each hour. René sat in the corner, wrapped in a blanket despite the heat, and listened to the thing outside his door count down the pennies it couldn't cross. By dawn, it had reached 1. 1, 1, 1. The voice was right outside the door now. René could hear it breathing, wet, labored breaths that smelled of swamp water and decay. He could see the shadow of something tall and thin through the gap beneath the door. 13, the voice whispered. 13 nights, then feeding. The shadow moved away. René heard footsteps, bare feet on wooden porch boards moving toward the swamp. He didn't move until the sun was fully up, and even then he kept the door locked. He understood now. The 13 pennies bought him 13 nights of safety, but on the 14th night the protection failed. The curse demanded to be fed, and if he didn't provide a substitute, it would feed on him or through him. He thought about what Father Dufresne had said, pass it, find someone to take your place. But who? Lisette was gone, taken by the thing that now shared his body, his mind. He had no other family, no close friends, just the regulars at the bar, the neighbors he waved to but never spoke with, the casual acquaintances of a life half-lived. Could he really curse one of them to save himself? The answer, when it came, surprised him with its certainty. Yes, he could. Because the alternative was becoming something that would hurt far more people. If he didn't pass the curse, he would become a vector, a source of infection that would spread through the town like plague. He'd seen it in his dreams, visions of red-eyed figures stalking the streets of Lacroix Parish, of bodies in the swamp and blood in the bayou. One death to prevent dozens, one curse to stop an outbreak. It was simple math, terrible, brutal math. He chose his target that afternoon, a drifter who'd been hanging around the bar for the past week, a man with no connections and no one to miss him. His name was Earl or maybe Carl. René couldn't remember and didn't care. He was perfect, disposable. René invited him to the cabin for dinner, promised a home-cooked meal, something better than the bar food he'd been living on. The man accepted eagerly, his eyes bright with the prospect of a free meal. René prepared the food with shaking hands. Steak, rare, so rare it was practically raw. He'd read that the curse could be passed through bodily fluids, through blood. All he needed was a cut, a nick, a moment of shared blood. But when the man arrived, when René raised the silver knife to cut the meat, he saw something that made him pause. A photograph, falling from the man's wallet as he reached for his cigarettes. A photograph of a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with gap-toothed smile and pigtails. "My daughter," the man said, catching René's gaze. "Haven't seen her in 2 years. Her mother won't let me, but I'm getting my act together. Gonna get a job, get a place, show her I'm worth something." René looked at the knife in his hand, at the man across the table, who had dreams and failures and people who loved him, however imperfectly. He couldn't do it. "I think you should go," René said. "What but the food?" "Get out, please, just get out." The man left, confused and angry, slamming the door behind him. René sat at the table and wept for his sister, for himself, for the monster he was becoming and the monster he couldn't bring himself to be. That night he woke in the swamp again. This time he wasn't alone. Lysette stood in the shallow water, her nightgown plastered to her thin frame, her eyes glowing red in the darkness. "Brother," she said, and her voice was the voice of the thing from his door, layered over his sister's familiar tones. "Why won't you feed us?" "Lysette, we're so hungry, Renee, so very hungry, and you keep us starving." She moved toward him, her feet not quite touching the ground, her movements jerky and wrong. "Pass the curse, brother. Give us someone to eat, or we'll eat you. We'll eat you and everyone you love." "I don't know how," Renee lied. "Blood for blood, life for life, it's simple." She was close now, close enough that he could smell the swamp on her skin, the decay in her hair. "Choose someone, Renee, or we'll choose for you." She reached out and touched his face. Her fingers were cold, so cold and sharp, sharp like the claws he'd grown, sharp like teeth. "The 101st night approaches," she whispered, "and on that night we all transform. Every soul you've touched, every life you've passed the curse to, we become what we were meant to be." "I haven't passed it to anyone," Renee said. "I couldn't." Lysette smiled, and her mouth was full of too many teeth. "Haven't you?" She vanished. Renee woke in his bathtub, the water cold and stagnant around him. He climbed out, shaking, and looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes were wrong, the pupils too large, the whites shot through with red. He was changing, they were all changing. And somewhere in the town of Lacroix Parish, he knew, others were waking up with copper in their mouths and blood on their hands. The curse was spreading, whether he wanted it to or not. He had to find the others, had to warn them, had to find a way to stop this before the 101st night arrived and the transformation became permanent. But first, he had to survive the next 13 nights. He placed the pennies by his door and waited for the counting to begin. 13, 13, 13. The voice was closer now, hungrier. And this time it wasn't alone. Renee could hear them all outside his door, his sister, the thing that wore her face, and others. Dozens of voices counting in unison. 13, 13, 13. The 101st night was coming. And he was running out of time. Marie Broussard hadn't spoken to her ex-husband in 3 years, not since the divorce papers were signed, and the last of her things were moved out of the cabin on Bayou Teche. She'd left Lacroix Parish for New Orleans, found a job at a hotel, built a life that didn't include Renee Thibodeaux and his silences and his drinking and his midnight disappearances. So when he called her out of the blue, his voice shaking on the other end of the line, she almost hung up. "Marie, please, I need to see you." "Renee, it's 3 in the morning." "I know, I'm sorry, but it's important. It's about what happened, why I changed, why you had to leave." Marie sat up in bed, the sheets pooling around her waist. Outside her apartment window, New Orleans glittered in the dark, a different world from the bayou town she'd escaped. "Renee, that was 3 years ago." "I know how long it's been, I know exactly how long." He paused, and she could hear him breathing, too fast, too shallow. "Please, Marie, just dinner, one evening, let me explain." She should have said no. Every instinct she possessed screamed at her to hang up, to block his number, to forget that Renee Thibodeaux existed. But there was something in his voice, a desperation she'd never heard before, not even at his worst. "Fine, Saturday, but I'm not coming to Lacroix Parish, you come here." I can't leave, it won't let me leave." "What won't let you leave?" "Please, Marie, just come. One dinner, then you'll understand." She arrived on Friday instead of Saturday, driving her old Honda through the winding roads that led back to the town she'd sworn never to see again. The bayou looked different in the late afternoon light, darker somehow, the cypress trees leaning over the road like mourners at a funeral. Renee's cabin sat at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by trees that seemed too close, too crowded. She parked and sat in her car for a long moment, gathering her courage. He met her at the door. He looked terrible, thin to the point of emaciation, his eyes sunken and shadowed, his hands shaking as he reached for her. "Marie, you came." "I came." She didn't take his hand. "What's going on, Renee? You look like death." "I feel like death." He stepped aside, gesturing into the cabin. "Come in, please, I've made dinner." The cabin smelled wrong. That was the first thing Marie noticed. It smelled of copper and rot, of old blood and something else, something musky and wild that made her think of zoos and animal dens. "You've redecorated," she said, trying for lightness. The cabin was different from how she remembered, darker. The windows covered with heavy curtains, the walls adorned with strange symbols she didn't recognize, circles of pennies, rows of iron nails, lines of salt that crunched under her shoes. "Protections," Renee said, following her gaze. "They don't work for long, but they buy time." "Protections from what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he led her to the dining room, where two places were set at a table that hadn't been there when she lived here. The plates were fine china, her grandmother's pattern, which Marie had taken with her in the divorce. "Where did you get these?" "I kept them." Renee wouldn't meet her eyes. I thought you might want them back." "Renee, what's going on? You're scaring me." "Sit down, please. I'll explain everything." She sat. He served the food steak, rare with potatoes and greens, her favorite meal, or it had been once. Now the smell of the meat made her stomach turn. "I'm pregnant," she said. The words fell into the space between them like stones into water. Renee froze, the serving fork halfway to her plate. "What?" 3 months. I wasn't going to tell you. It's not yours. We hadn't. Not for years before the divorce, but I thought you should know. I'm starting a new life, Renee. I'm happy. Or I was until you called." He set down the fork. His hands were shaking worse now, trembling so hard the silverware rattled against the china. "Marie." "Who is she?" "The father, just some guy, a tourist. It was a mistake, but I'm keeping the baby. I'm going to be a mother, Renee. Can you believe that?" She was talking too fast, filling the silence with words because the silence felt dangerous. Because Renee was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read, hunger and horror and something else, something that looked almost like hope. "You need to leave," he said. "What?" "You need to leave right now. Get in your car and drive. Don't stop until you reach New Orleans." "Renee, I just got here." "Gio." His shout made her jump. But before she could stand, before she could gather her things and flee, she felt it. A kick. The baby, her baby, 3 months along and barely showing, kicked violently. Not the gentle flutter of early pregnancy, but a hard, sharp movement that made her gasp and clutch her stomach. "Marie." "It's nothing, just," the baby moved. But it moved again, harder this time, and Marie felt a sudden, irrational fear. The baby was kicking toward Renee, toward his shadow, which stretched long across the table in the dim light. "Your shadow," she whispered. "Renee, what's wrong with your shadow?" He looked down. His shadow was wrong, too long, too thin, with angles that didn't match his body. And where his head should be, the shadow seemed to have 2 points, like horns. "Oh God," Renee said. "Oh God, it's too late. It's already seen you." The baby kicked again, and this time Marie screamed. The pain was sharp, burning, like something was clawing at her from the inside. "Make it stop," she gasped. "Renee, make it stop." I can't stop it. I can only." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. Not a kitchen knife, something older, ceremonial, with a silver blade that caught the light. "I'm sorry, Marie, I'm so sorry, but if I don't do this, it will kill you. It will kill both of you." "Renee, no." He moved faster than she could react. The knife flashed and she felt a line of fire across her forearm. Not deep, just a scratch, just enough to draw blood. What did you do? She clutched her arm, watching the blood well up and drip onto the tablecloth. Renee, what did you do? I passed it, he whispered. I passed the curse. It should have worked. It should have transferred to you. What curse? Renee, you're insane. But then she felt it. The baby kicked again, but differently this time, not in fear, but in hunger. She felt a warmth spreading through her body, a heat that started at the cut on her arm and radiated outward. And she felt something else, something watching her from the shadows, something with red eyes. It's not working, Renee said. He was staring at her arm, at the blood that flowed from the cut. It's supposed to transfer. You're supposed to take my place, but you're not. You're not changing. Renee, I don't feel right. I know, I'm sorry. He dropped the knife. It clattered against the floor, the silver blade now streaked with red. It should have worked, Father Dufresne said. Father Dufresne, the priest. He said I could pass the curse to someone else, but you're not. Renee's eyes widened. The baby, it's the baby. The curse can't take you because you're already carrying something new, something that hasn't chosen yet. Marie felt the baby kick again, and this time she heard it, a sound that couldn't be real, that couldn't be coming from inside her. A growl, low and wet and hungry. Get out, Renee said. Marie, get out of here, now. I can't move. She couldn't. Her body was frozen, locked in place by something that wasn't her will. She watched, helpless, as Renee's shadow detached from the floor and moved toward her. It wasn't a shadow anymore. It was something else, something tall and thin with red eyes and too many limbs. It reached out with fingers that ended in claws and touched her stomach. No, Renee screamed. He grabbed the silver knife from the floor and lunged, but the thing backhanded him across the room. He hit the wall with a crack and slid down, unconscious. The thing turned back to Marie. Its mouth opened, if it could be called a mouth, and it spoke. 2 for 1, it said, and its voice was the sound of wet leaves and rotting wood. A bargain. Marie felt the baby inside her twist, felt it turn toward the thing's touch, felt it reach back. No, she whispered, not my baby, please. Shared, the thing said. Split, you both carry now, you both feed, you both transform. It pressed its hand, if it could be called a hand, against her stomach, and Marie felt something pass into her. Something cold and ancient and hungry. Then it was gone. The shadow returned to Renee's unconscious form. The room was just a room again, dark and strange, but just a room. Marie could move. She stood up, shaking, and looked at her arm. The cut was already healing, the skin knitting together in a way that shouldn't be possible. She looked at her stomach, at the life inside her. What are you? She whispered. The baby kicked, gentle now, almost loving. Marie ran. She didn't stop at her car. She ran into the swamp, into the cypress trees, following some instinct she didn't understand. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out, until she collapsed in the mud beside a blackwater bayou. And there, in the dark, she felt the first transformation begin. Renee woke to the sound of screaming. It took him a moment to remember where he was, the cabin, the dinner, Marie. He tried to pass the curse to her, had cut her with the silver knife, but something had gone wrong. The screaming continued, high and thin like an animal in a trap. He stumbled to his feet, his head pounding where it had hit the wall. The dining room was empty, the table overturned, the food scattered across the floor. Marie was gone. But the screaming was coming from outside. Renee grabbed the silver knife and ran. The night was dark, the moon hidden behind clouds that smelled of coming rain. He followed the screams into the swamp, his feet finding paths he didn't remember learning. He found her in a clearing, surrounded by cypress knees that rose from the water like teeth. She was on her knees in the mud, her clothes torn, her body convulsing. Marie! She looked up at him and he saw that her eyes were wrong. The pupils were dilated, the whites shot through with red, just like his, just like Lysette's. "You did this," she gasped. "You did this to me." "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "The baby," she clutched her stomach, "it's changing, I can feel it changing." Renee knelt beside her, the knife forgotten in his hand. "Marie, listen to me. The curse, it was supposed to transfer to you, completely. You were supposed to take my place, but something went wrong." "The baby," she said again. "It wanted the baby too, it split, we're both. She convulsed again, her back arching, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Renee watched in horror as her fingers began to change, the nails thickening, yellowing, curving into claws. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." But it was happening to him too. He could feel it, the familiar ache in his jaw as his teeth sharpened, the stretching pain in his fingers as the claws emerged. They were transforming together, synchronized, two bodies becoming one kind of monster. "It wants more," Marie gasped when the convulsion passed. "Can't you feel it? It's not satisfied with two, it wants everyone." She was right. Renee could feel it now. The hunger that had been background noise in his mind was now a roar. The curse didn't just want hosts, it wanted to spread, to multiply, to consume. "The 101st night," Marie said. "It's coming, and when it arrives—" "Everyone transforms," Renee finished. "Everyone we've touched, everyone who's touched us, it becomes a cascade, an outbreak." "How do we stop it?" "I don't know," Father Dufresne said. Father Dufresne is a fool. A new voice from the edge of the clearing. He knows the old ways, but he doesn't understand the new ones. Renee turned. Lysette stood among the cypress trees, her nightgown hanging in tatters from her frame. She looked more like the thing now than like his sister, too tall, too thin, her movements jerky and wrong. "Lysette," Renee said, you're still in there." "I'm always in here, brother," she smiled, and her mouth was full of too many teeth. "But I'm not alone anymore. I'm part of something bigger now, something older." "The curse," Marie said. She was still on her knees, but her eyes were clearer now. "You're the curse." "I'm a vessel, we're all vessels." Lysette moved closer, her feet not quite touching the ground. "But you're special, Renee. You were the first, the original host. The curse flows through you like water through a spring." "What does that mean?" "It means you can control it, direct it, choose who becomes like us and who becomes food." She reached out and touched his face, her fingers cold and sharp. "You could be a king, brother, a god of the new world." "I don't want to be a god, I want to be human." "Too late," she dropped her hand. "The choice was made 7 years ago when you broke your Lent, when you opened the door and invited us in." "Then I'll close the door." "You can't, the door only opens wider." She turned to Marie. "And you, carrying new life, the curse loves new life, so pure, so malleable, your child will be magnificent." "Stay away from my baby," Marie snarled. Her claws were fully extended now, and she rose to her feet with a fluid grace that wasn't entirely human. "Or what, you'll fight me," Lysette laughed. "We're on the same side, sister, we all serve the same master now." "I serve no one." "You will. On the 101st night you'll understand, we'll all understand." She began to fade, her form becoming translucent. "Until then, feed, grow, spread the blessing to others. The more hosts, the stronger we become." "Lysette, wait." But she was gone. Renee and Marie stood alone in the clearing, two monsters in human skin, staring at each other with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. "What do we do?" Marie asked. "We survive," Renee said. "We survive until we find a way to stop this." "And if we can't stop it?" He didn't answer, he didn't need to. They both knew the truth. The 101st night was coming. And nothing would ever be the same. The infection spread through Lacroix Parish like water through cracked glass, seeping into every corner, every home, every heart. It started small. A farmer who woke up in his pig pen, covered in blood. A school teacher who found herself eating raw meat in the cafeteria freezer. A priest who heard voices in the confessional, voices that whispered secrets no human should know. By the 50th night, half the town was showing symptoms. By the 75th, the transformations had begun in earnest. By the 90th night, the survivors had gathered at St. Augustine's, barricading themselves inside the old wooden church. Father Dufresne led them. The old priest had seen this before, or something like it, stories from his grandfather, tales of the old days when the bayou was wilder and the faith was stronger. 13 rows of nails, he instructed, watching as the survivors hammered iron into the pews. 13 lines of salt, 13 candles burning. "Will it work?" asked Mrs. LeBlanc, the librarian. Her husband was outside somewhere, or what was left of him. "It will hold them for a time." "And then?" Father Dufresne didn't answer. He climbed into the pulpit and opened his Bible to Exodus. "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live," he read, his voice carrying through the crowded church. "In the old days they burned them. In the older days they drowned them. But this is not witchcraft. This is older, wilder." "What is it?" someone shouted from the pews. "It's hunger," the priest said. "Pure, simple hunger. The hunger of the swamp, of the bayou, of the spaces between the world we see and the world that sees us. It was here before us. It will be here after." The walls shook. Something massive hit the outside of the church, not once but rhythmically like a heartbeat. "They're here," Father Dufresne said calmly. "The transformed, the blessed they call themselves, the swarm." Through the windows the survivors could see them. Dozens of figures standing in the churchyard. They looked almost human in the moonlight until they moved, until they opened their mouths and showed their teeth. "René Thibaudaux is among them," someone whispered. "I saw him, he's leading them." "René is the source," Father Dufresne said. "The first host, the spring from which the river flows if we could stop him." "How?" Mrs. LeBlanc asked. "How do we stop something like that?" "Silver," the priest said. "Fire, faith, but mostly we wait." "For what?" "For the 101st night. For the final transformation. For the moment when the curse either consumes us all or burns itself out." The walls shook again, harder this time. A window cracked, the glass spiderwebbing from the impact. "They're getting stronger," someone said. "They feed on fear," Father Dufresne replied. "On despair, on the breaking of hope. Do not give them what they want." He began to pray. The survivors joined him, their voices rising in the ancient words of the liturgy. Outside, the transformed screamed and clawed at the walls, but the prayers held them back. For now, the 101st night began with silence. René stood at the edge of the swamp, Marie beside him, and watched the sun set over Lacroix Parish. The sky turned the color of old blood, of copper pennies, of the eyes that now looked out from half the faces in town. "It's time," Marie said. She was fully transformed now, her body elongated, her movements fluid and predatory. Only her eyes remained human, and they were full of sorrow. "I know. The church is the last holdout. The priest has kept them safe." "Not safe," René said, "just delayed. The curse always wins in the end." "Does it?" He turned to look at her. "You have an idea." "The baby kicked today. For the first time in weeks it kicked like a normal baby, like it was happy." "What does that mean?" "I don't know, but I felt something different." She touched her stomach. "The curse is in me, in the baby, but maybe it's not the only thing in us." René thought about that. Thought about the 7 years of broken Lent, the door he'd opened, the thing he'd invited in. Thought about his sister, his ex-wife, the town he'd helped destroy. "The church," he said. "We need to go to the church." "They'll kill us." "Maybe or maybe." He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. They moved through the town together, followed by the swarm. The transformed fell in behind them, dozens, then hundreds, a river of red eyes and sharp teeth flowing toward St. Augustine's. The church doors were barred, the windows covered. But Renee could smell the fear inside, could taste the despair that leaked through the cracks. "Father Dufresne," he called, "I know you can hear me, open the doors." "Never," the priest's voice came from within, strong despite his age. "You'll not have these souls, demon." "I'm not a demon, Father. I'm just a man who made a mistake, a man who wants to fix it." "Lies." "No lies, just truth." Renee placed his hand on the door. He could feel the protections, the iron, the salt, the prayers. They burned his palm, but he didn't pull away. "The 101st night is here, the final transformation, but it doesn't have to end in death." "What do you want?" "Confession. I want to confess." Silence, then the sound of bolts being drawn back. The doors opened slowly. Father Dufresne stood in the entrance, a silver crucifix in one hand, a bottle of holy water in the other. "You come alone," the priest said. "The others stay outside." "Agreed." Renee stepped into the church. Marie followed. "I said alone." "She's part of this," Renee interrupted. "She's carrying the future. She needs to be here." The priest looked at Marie, at her transformed body, at the faint glow of red in her eyes. Then he looked at her stomach, at the life growing within. "Very well, the confessional, both of you." They entered the small wooden booth, the same one where Renee had first learned the truth about his curse. Father Dufresne sat on the other side of the screen. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." "Speak your sins, child." "I broke my Lent. I opened a door. I invited something in that should have stayed out. And I've spent 7 years trying to survive it, trying to pass it, trying to escape. And now I understand. The curse isn't punishment, it's opportunity, it's conversion." "Conversion to what?" "To something new, something that doesn't have to be evil." Renee reached out and took Marie's hand. "The baby, it's part curse, yes, but it's also part human, part hope, part future. The curse tried to consume it, but it couldn't, because life is stronger than death, even cursed life." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the curse can be converted, changed, not destroyed, it's too old for that, but redirected, made into something else." "How?" "Faith." Renee squeezed Marie's hand. "Real faith, not the faith of obligation like I had before, not the faith of fear like I've had since, but the faith of choice, of love, of sacrifice." He began to pray. Marie joined him. The words of the Lord's Prayer filled the confessional, rising like incense. "Our Father who art in heaven." Father Dufresne hesitated. Then he joined them, his old voice cracking but clear. "Hallowed be thy name." The prayer continued, 3 voices becoming one. And as they prayed, something changed. Renee felt the curse inside him, the hunger, the darkness, the ancient thing that had lived in his soul for 7 years shift. It didn't leave, it transformed. "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done." Marie felt it too. The baby inside her stopped moving, then kicked once strong and sure. A kick of recognition, of acceptance. "On earth as it is in heaven." Father Dufresne felt it last. The prayer he'd said 10,000 times suddenly meant something new. The words became alive, became power, became change. "Give us this day our daily bread." The confessional began to glow, not with the red light of the curse, but with something else, something golden and warm. "And forgive us our trespasses." The swarm outside began to scream, not in anger but in something else, something like release. "As we forgive those who trespass against us." Renee looked at Father Dufresne through the screen. The old priest's eyes were changing. The red glow that had been there, hidden, subtle but present, flared bright. "Lead us not into temptation." "No," Renee whispered, "no, not him. But deliver us from evil." The glow in the priest's eyes steadied, became permanent. "Amen." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Father Dufresne spoke, and his voice was different, layered like Lysette's had been, like all the transformed. "The curse isn't broken," he said. "It's converted." "What have we done?" Marie asked. "What we had to do." René stood up, his body still transformed but his mind clearer than it had been in years. The curse needed a new host, a stronger host, someone with real faith to anchor it. And now it spreads differently, not through fear but through faith, not through violence but through conversion. He looked at the priest, at the red eyes that now looked back at him with ancient wisdom. The 101st night isn't an ending, it's a beginning. Outside, the swarm had stopped screaming. They were kneeling now, hundreds of transformed figures kneeling in the churchyard, their faces turned toward the rising sun. "What happens now?" Marie asked. "Now we wait," René said, "for the next 101 nights, for the next transformation, for the world to change." He led her out of the church into the morning light. The swarm parted before them, making way for their king and queen. Behind them, Father Dufresne began to pray. But the words were different now, older, stranger, in a language that hadn't been spoken in centuries. The curse wasn't broken. It had just learned a new way to grow. The Thibaudocs' cabin sat empty for 3 months. Then one day in late summer, a moving truck appeared on the dirt road. A young family, father, mother, toddler, unloaded their belongings and began to make the old place their own. They didn't know about René Thibaudocs, didn't know about the 101 nights, the curse, the transformation that had consumed the town. They were from the city looking for a fresh start, a simpler life. The toddler was named Ethan. He was 2 years old, curious, fearless. He explored every corner of the cabin while his parents unpacked, his small fingers finding all the hidden places that adults forgot to check. On his 3rd day in the new house, he found the pennies. They were under the front door, arranged in a neat circle. 13 copper coins, green with age but still distinct. "Mommy," Ethan called, his voice bright with discovery. "Money." His mother came to see. "Where did you find those, sweetie?" "Under the door." He picked them up one by one, counting as he went. 1, 2, 3. His mother smiled. "Are you counting in French? Where did you learn that?" "The man taught me," Ethan said. "The tall man he visits at night." His mother's smile faltered. "What man, honey?" "The man with red eyes. He says he's waiting for the 101st night." Ethan finished counting the pennies and looked up at his mother. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something red and ancient and hungry. Then it was gone, and he was just a little boy again, holding 13 copper coins. Deep in the swamp, something howled. The sound carried across the water, through the cypress trees, into the open door of the cabin. It sounded almost like a prayer, almost like a song, almost like the beginning of something new. The 101st night would come again, and the curse would continue. Forever. The days between the 14th night and the 50th blurred together in René's memory like watercolor left in the rain. He existed in a state of perpetual exhaustion, caught between the human he had been and the monster he was becoming. He learned to manage the hunger. Raw meat from the butcher's shop, consumed in the privacy of his cabin, away from prying eyes. He learned to manage the sleeplessness, catching fragments of rest in the bathtub, in closets, in any enclosed space where the curse couldn't reach him. But he couldn't manage the visions. They came to him in the moments between waking and sleeping, in the gray hours before dawn when the world seemed to hold its breath. He would see the swamp as it truly was, not the bayou he had grown up in, but something older, something that existed beneath the surface of reality. He saw the thing with red eyes in its true form, not the tall, thin figure that stalked his property, but something vast and ancient, something that wore the swamp like a skin. It had no true shape, no fixed form. It was hunger made manifest, desire given flesh, the empty space where faith had been. And he saw the others, the infected, the transformed. They were spreading faster than he had imagined. Father Dufresne had been right. The curse was like a virus, seeking hosts, multiplying through contact. Every person Rene touched, every person who touched him, carried the seed of transformation within them. He saw Mrs. LeBlanc from the library, her eyes glowing red as she shelved books in the dark. He saw Deputy Landry, his smile too wide, his teeth too sharp. He saw the children at the elementary school, playing games that involved counting to 13, to 101. The town was changing. Lacroix Parish was becoming something else. And Rene was at the center of it all. On the 33rd night, he went to see Father Dufresne again. The church was empty when he arrived, the pews dark and silent. The old priest was in the confessional, waiting. "I knew you'd come," Father Dufresne said. "The dreams have started, haven't they?" "How did you know?" "Because I have them too." The priest's voice was heavy with exhaustion. Every night, the red eyes, the counting, the hunger. "You're infected." "I was infected before you were born, Rene, before your father was born. This curse, it's been in Lacroix Parish for generations. Your broken lent didn't invite it in, it just woke it up." Rene felt the floor tilt beneath him. "What do you mean?" "The Thibaudox family has carried this curse for 200 years. Since the first Rene Thibaudox made a bargain with something in the swamp. Since he traded his faith for prosperity, his soul for land." "That's not possible." "It's not only possible, it's true. You've always been infected, Rene. The potential was always there, sleeping in your blood. Your broken lent was just the trigger, the excuse the curse needed to activate." "Then why me? Why now?" "Because you're the seventh son of a seventh son, because you were born on the winter solstice, because the stars aligned and the door opened." Father Dufresne sighed. "There are reasons, Rene, old reasons, reasons that have nothing to do with free will and everything to do with destiny." "So I'm doomed, we're all doomed." "Not necessarily. There is a way to end it, a way to break the cycle." "Tell me." "The 101st night. When the transformation is complete, when the curse reaches its full power, that's when it's vulnerable. That's when it can be destroyed." "How?" "Sacrifice. True sacrifice. Not the passing of the curse, but the acceptance of it. Someone must take the full weight of the infection, must become the host for all of it. Every transformation, every infection, every drop of cursed blood in Lacroix Parish. That would kill them. It would destroy them, body and soul. They would cease to exist and the curse would die with them." Rene was silent for a long moment. "You're talking about suicide." "I'm talking about martyrdom. There's a difference." "And who would do this? Who would sacrifice themselves?" "The original host, the source, you, Rene." Rene laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You want me to die to save everyone else?" "I want you to consider it. The curse wants to spread. It wants to consume. But if you take it all, if you become the vessel for every infection, I become a god. You become a prison." Rene stood up. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long. The 101st night approaches, and when it arrives, the choice will be made for you." Rene left the church and walked into the swamp. He needed to think, needed to understand what he was becoming. The swamp accepted him. The cypress trees leaned aside, creating paths where none had existed. The water parted before his feet. The creatures of the night, the alligators, the snakes, the 1,000 varieties of insect, fell silent as he passed. He was their king now, their god. And he hated it. He found Lisette in a clearing deep in the bayou. She was waiting for him, her eyes glowing red in the darkness. "Brother," she said, "you've been talking to the priest." "You know." "I know everything now. I'm part of the network, the swarm." She smiled and her teeth were too sharp. "I know what he's offering you, death, oblivion." He says it would save everyone. It would save the humans, but what about us? What about the transformed, the blessed? You're not blessed, Lysette, you're cursed. Am I? She spread her arms, showing him her new form. She was taller now, thinner, her limbs elongated and graceful. I can see in the dark, brother. I can hear heartbeats from 100 yards away. I can smell fear, taste desire, feel the pulse of life in every living thing. I'm more than human now. I'm better. You're a monster. I'm an evolution. She stepped closer. The curse isn't a disease, Renee. It's an upgrade, a transformation, the next step in human development. It kills people. It changes people. Some don't survive the change. That's natural selection. It's murder. It's progress. She touched his face, her fingers cold and sharp. Don't listen to the priest, brother. Don't sacrifice yourself. Embrace what you are. Lead us. The 101st night isn't an ending. It's a beginning. A beginning of what? A new world. A world where the strong don't hide their strength, where the hungry don't deny their hunger, where the blessed can walk in daylight and the humans serve their rightful masters. You want to enslave humanity. I want to liberate the monsters. She dropped her hand. Think about it, brother, but don't think too long. The swarm grows restless, and if you won't lead them, someone else will. She vanished into the trees, leaving Renee alone in the clearing. He stood there until dawn, wrestling with choices that had no good outcomes. Sacrifice himself and save the town but lose his soul. Embrace the curse and become a monster but live. Or find a third option, a way to fight, to resist, to survive without surrendering his humanity. He didn't find it. But he knew he had to keep looking. Because the 101st night was coming. And he wasn't ready to die. By the 75th night, half of Lacroix Parish had been infected. It happened slowly at first, a farmer here, a shopkeeper there. Then faster exponentially as the transformed began to actively seek out new hosts. They didn't need to bite or scratch, just a touch was enough. A handshake, a hug, a passing brush of skin against skin. The town's infrastructure began to break down. The sheriff's department stopped responding to calls. The hospital closed its doors. The schools shut down, then reopened with new teachers, new students, new rules. Renee watched it happen from the isolation of his cabin. He ventured out only to gather food, to check on the few remaining humans, to try to understand the scope of the disaster. He found survivors huddled in the church, in the library, in basements and attics. He found families barricaded in their homes, armed with shotguns and prayers. He found children who had never known a world without red eyes in the dark. And he found the transformed. They were everywhere now, walking the streets in daylight, their eyes hidden behind sunglasses, their hunger barely concealed. They had jobs, homes, lives. They were integrating, infiltrating, preparing. For what Renee didn't know, but he could feel it coming. The tension in the air, the sense of waiting, the countdown to something vast and terrible. On the 88th night, he met with the remaining survivors. There were 23 of them, gathered in the basement of St. Augustine's. Father Dufresne presided, his eyes red-rimmed and tired. The 101st night is 13 days away, he said. On that night the transformation will be complete, the curse will reach its full power, and those who haven't been infected will be consumed. Consumed how? Asked Mrs. LeBlanc. She was one of the few who had avoided infection, though Renee could see the fear eating at her. The swarm will feed, on fear, on flesh, on souls. The 101st night is a feast and we are the menu. Then we fight, said a young man named Thomas. He was a mechanic, broad-shouldered and brave. We have guns, we have fire, we can hold them off. You can't fight this, Renee said. I've tried. The curse doesn't care about bullets, it doesn't care about fire, it just keeps coming. Then what do we do? Renee looked at Father Dufresne. The old priest nodded. We survive, Renee said. We barricade ourselves in. We wait out the night. And when dawn comes, if we're still alive, we run. We leave Lacroix Parish and never look back. And go where? Anywhere, everywhere. The curse is tied to this place, to this swamp. If we can get far enough away, we might be safe. Might, Mrs. LeBlanc repeated. That's not very reassuring. It's the best I can offer. They made their plans. The church would be their fortress. They would reinforce the doors, cover the windows, create barriers of iron and salt and faith. They would wait out the 101st night together, praying for dawn. René didn't tell them the truth, that he didn't know if distance would save them, that the curse might already be inside them, dormant, waiting. That running might be exactly what the swarm wanted. He didn't tell them that he was considering Father Dufresne's offer, the sacrifice, the martyrdom. He didn't tell them that he was afraid. The days passed. The town grew quieter, the streets emptier. The transformed retreated to the swamp, to the bayou, to the dark places where they gathered and waited. On the 99th night, René went to see Marie. She was living in a cabin on the edge of town, her pregnancy showing now, her body changed by more than just the child within her. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and her movements had the fluid grace of the transformed. But she was still Marie, still human, still fighting. The baby kicked today, she said when René arrived. For hours, like it was trying to tell me something. What do you think it's trying to say? I think, she touched her stomach, I think it knows what's coming. The 101st night, the transformation, I think it's afraid. It should be. Can you save it? Marie looked at him, her eyes pleading. I don't care about me, I'm already infected, but the baby, it's innocent, it didn't choose this. I don't know if I can save anyone, René admitted. I'm still trying to save myself. Then try harder, Marie's voice hardened. You're the source, René, the first host. If anyone can stop this, it's you. Father Dufresne says I can end it by sacrificing myself, taking all the curse into me. Then do it. I don't want to die. No one wants to die, but sometimes, she touched her stomach again, sometimes you have to choose your life or theirs, your soul or theirs. And if I choose wrong, then we all die, and the curse wins. René stayed with her until dawn. They didn't speak much, just sat together, two monsters in human skin, waiting for the end. When the sun rose, René kissed her forehead and left. He had a choice to make. And time was running out. The survivors gathered at St. Augustine's on the morning of the 100th night. They came in cars, in trucks, on foot. 23 people carrying everything they owned, everything they hoped to save. They brought food and water, weapons and tools, photographs and memories. They brought their fear. René helped them fortify the church. They boarded up the windows, barricaded the doors, created barriers of iron and salt. Father Dufresne blessed every corner, every shadow, every potential entrance. It won't hold them, the priest said quietly when the others were out of earshot. Not really, but it will slow them down. Slow them down for what? For you to make your choice. René didn't answer. He kept working, hammering nails, hanging crosses, doing anything to keep his hands busy and his mind empty. As the sun set on the 100th night, they gathered in the sanctuary. Father Dufresne led them in prayer, his voice strong despite his fear. The Lord is my shepherd, he began. I shall not want, the survivors responded. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Outside the swamp was waking. René could hear them, the transformed, the swarm, his sister among them. They were singing, a low, rhythmic chant that sounded almost like the liturgy. Leadeth me beside the still waters. The singing grew louder, closer. Restoreth my soul. Something hit the door, a heavy blow that made the wood groan. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Another blow, the barricade shuddered. I will fear no evil. The windows rattled, the walls shook. The swarm was outside, surrounding the church, testing the defenses. For thou art with me. Renee stood up. Keep praying, he said. Don't stop no matter what happens. Where are you going? Mrs. LeBlanc asked. To make my choice. He walked to the confessional. Father Dufresne followed. You've decided. I'm deciding. There's no more time, Renee. The 101st night begins at midnight. In a few hours, the transformation will be complete. I know. Renee entered the confessional, knelt in the darkness. I need to understand something first. If I take the curse, all of it, what happens to the others, the infected, the transformed? They die, the curse sustains them. Without it, they revert to human, to dead. Even Lisette. Even Lisette. And Marie, the baby. The baby might survive. It's new, unformed. It might be able to shed the infection. But Marie. Marie dies. Yes. Renee was silent for a long moment. And if I don't take the curse, if I let the transformation happen, then you become the king of the swarm, the source of all infection. You live but as a monster, and the curse spreads unchecked until it consumes everything. There's no good choice. There's never a good choice, only the least bad one. Renee thought of his sister, of Marie, of the baby that might be his last chance at redemption. I'll do it, he said. I'll take the curse. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Father Dufresne began to pray. Not the formal liturgy, but something older. Something in Latin, then in French, then in a language Renee didn't recognize. The air in the confessional grew heavy, thick. It pressed against Renee's skin, against his mind, against his soul. What's happening? The curse is gathering, preparing to consolidate. The priest's voice was strained. It's going to hurt, Renee, more than anything you've ever felt. I understand. No, you don't, but you will. The pain began. It started in his chest, a burning like his heart was on fire. It spread outward through his veins, his muscles, his bones. Every cell in his body screamed in agony. He felt the curse moving, not just his infection, but all of them. Every transformed soul in Lacroix Parish, every drop of cursed blood, every whispered prayer to the red-eyed god. They were flowing into him. He screamed. The sound was lost in the greater scream of the swarm outside the church, feeling their power drain away. Hold on, Father Dufresne shouted. Just a little longer. Renee held on. Through the pain, through the agony, through the feeling of his soul being torn apart and stitched back together wrong. He held on. And then suddenly it was over. The pain stopped, the pressure released. Renee slumped forward, gasping, his body shaking. Is it done? He whispered. It's done. Father Dufresne's voice was awed. You hold it all now, Renee. Every infection, every transformation, it's all inside you. And the others? Look. Renee stumbled out of the confessional. The church was silent. The survivors were staring at him, their faces pale. What happened? Mrs. LeBlanc asked. The noise outside, it stopped. Renee walked to the door. He opened it, stepped onto the porch. The swarm was on the ground. Dozens of transformed figures lying in the dirt, their eyes closed, their chests still. Dead, all of them. Renee searched for Lisette. Found her near the cypress trees, her body already cooling, her face peaceful in death. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. He felt Marie before he saw her. She was running toward him from her cabin, her stomach heavy with child, her eyes wide with confusion. What happened? She gasped. I felt something left me. The curse, Renee said. I took it, all of it. Then it's over. It's contained. He didn't tell her the rest. that he could feel the curse inside him, writhing, hungry, that it was trying to break free, to spread again, to infect new hosts, that he didn't know how long he could hold it. They stood together as the sun rose on the 101st day. The swarm was dead. The town was saved. The curse was contained. But Rene knew, with a certainty that settled in his bones like ice, that it wasn't over. The curse was patient, and it would find a way out. Eventually, they buried the dead on a Tuesday. It took 3 days to find all the bodies. The transformed had collapsed wherever they stood, their bodies reverting to human form in death. Lisette was buried in the family plot beside their parents. Father Dufresne said the words, his voice heavy with guilt. Rene didn't attend the funeral. He couldn't. The curse was too strong inside him, too hungry. Being near the grieving, near the vulnerable, was a temptation he couldn't risk. He stayed in the church, in the confessional where he had accepted the burden. Father Dufresne brought him food, water, books to pass the time. "How long can you hold it?" the priest asked. "I don't know, days, weeks, maybe longer. And when you can't hold it anymore, then I'll die, and the curse will be released. There must be another way, a permanent solution. If there is, I haven't found it." The days passed. The town slowly returned to normal. The survivors left, one by one, seeking new lives far from Lacroix Parish. Mrs. LeBlanc moved to Baton Rouge. Thomas, the mechanic, went to Texas. The others scattered across the country, carrying their trauma with them. Marie stayed. She gave birth to a healthy baby girl, named her Hope, and moved into Rene's cabin to help care for him. "You don't have to do this," Rene told her. "I do," she said. "You saved my life, saved my daughter's life. I owe you." "You owe me nothing. I'm the one who infected you in the first place. And you're the one who cured me." She touched his hand, her fingers warm and human. "We're even." But they weren't even. Rene could feel the curse inside him, a constant pressure, a whispering voice. It wanted to be free, wanted to spread, wanted to consume. He held it back through willpower, through prayer, through sheer stubbornness. But he could feel himself weakening, day by day, hour by hour. On the 50th day, after the 101st night, he called Father Dufresne to the confessional. "I can't hold it much longer," he said. "A week, maybe 2. Then we need to find a solution." "There is no solution. The curse is too old, too strong. The only way to destroy it is to destroy me." "Rene." "I'm not afraid to die, Father. I'm afraid of what happens after. If I die, the curse is released. It will spread again, faster than before. All of this, Lisette, the others, everything, will have been for nothing. Then we find a way to destroy the curse with you." "How?" Father Dufresne was silent for a long moment. "Fire," he said finally. "The old stories, they speak of fire, of purification. If you were to burn, the curse might burn with you." "Might." "It's the best I can offer." Rene considered it. "The swamp," he said. "There's a place, deep in the bayou, where the gas bubbles up from the earth. If I went there, lit a spark, the whole swamp would burn. And the curse with it. And you. And me." They made the arrangements in secret. Marie couldn't know, she would try to stop him. The town couldn't know, they would try to save him. On the 60th day, Rene walked into the swamp for the last time. He carried a lighter in his pocket and a prayer on his lips. He walked the paths that the curse showed him, the paths that led deep into the bayou, to the place where the earth bled gas and fire. He found it at dusk, a pool of black water surrounded by cypress trees. The surface bubbled with methane, the air thick with the smell of sulfur. He stood at the edge and looked back at the world he was leaving. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything." He took out the lighter. His thumb hovered over the wheel. "Brother." He turned. Lisette stood behind him, not dead, not alive, something in between. "You're not real," Rene said. You're a vision, a trick. I'm real enough, she smiled and her teeth were sharp. The curse is strong here, brother, strong enough to bring back the dead. Then you're part of the curse, part of what I'm trying to destroy. You can't destroy it, Renee, you can only delay it. She stepped closer. But there's another way, a way to live, to control it. How? Don't fight it, embrace it. Become the king you were meant to be. I don't want to be a king. Then be a prison, but a living one, not a dead one. She touched his face, her fingers cold. You can hold the curse forever, brother, live forever, just stop fighting. Let it become part of you. And become a monster. Become a god. Renee looked at the lighter in his hand, at the pool of gas behind him, at the sister who was and wasn't his sister. No, he said. He flicked the lighter, the flame caught. Renee, don't, he threw it. The explosion was blinding, a fireball that consumed the pool, the trees, the vision of Lysette. The flame spread quickly, racing through the dry underbrush, consuming everything in their path. Renee stood in the center of it, feeling the fire consume him, feeling the curse scream and writhe. It fought, tried to escape, to flee, to find a new host. But Renee held it tight, even as his body burned, even as his mind shattered. He held it. And then finally he let go. The fire burned for 3 days. When it finally died, the swamp was changed. The cypress trees were gone, replaced by ash. The water was black with soot. And in the center of the burned area, they found a body. Renee Thibodeaux, unmarked by the flames, peaceful in death. They buried him in the churchyard beside his sister. Father Dufresne said the words, and this time he meant them. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The town mourned. Marie wept, the baby cried. But the curse was gone, destroyed, ended. Or so they thought. The house sat empty for 3 months. Then one day in late spring, a moving truck appeared on the dirt road. A young family, father, mother, toddler, unloaded their belongings and began to make the old place their own. They didn't know about Renee Thibodeaux, didn't know about the 101 nights, the curse, the fire that was supposed to have ended it all. They were from the city looking for a fresh start, a simpler life, a place to raise their son. The toddler was named Ethan. He was 2 years old, curious, fearless. He explored every corner of the cabin while his parents unpacked, his small fingers finding all the hidden places that adults forgot to check. On his 3rd day in the new house, he found the pennies. They were under the front door, arranged in a neat circle. 13 copper coins, green with age but still distinct. "Mommy," Ethan called, his voice bright with discovery. "Money." His mother came to see. "Where did you find those, sweetie?" "Under the door." He picked them up one by one, counting as he went. "Un, deux, trois." His mother smiled. "Are you counting in French? Where did you learn that?" "The man taught me," Ethan said. "The tall man, he visits at night." His mother's smile faltered. "What man, honey?" "The man with red eyes. He says he's waiting for the next 101 nights." Ethan finished counting the pennies and looked up at his mother. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something red and ancient and hungry. Then it was gone, and he was just a little boy again, holding 13 copper coins. Deep in the swamp, something stirred in the ashes, something that had survived the fire, something that was patient. The 101st night would come again. And the curse would continue. Forever. Before the curse, before the broken lint, before the red eyes in the dark, Renee Thibodeaux had been a good man. Or as good as any man could be in a town like Lacroix Parish, where the swamp breathed at night and the past was never truly past. He had been born in 1975, the 7th son of a 7th son. His father, Antoine Thibodeaux, had been a fisherman who knew the bayou like the back of his hand. His mother, Marie Claire, had been a devout Catholic who prayed the rosary every day and never missed Mass. René had been raised in the faith, baptized at St. Augustine's, confirmed at 13, married at 25. He had truly believed in the God of his fathers, in the saints and angels, in the power of prayer and sacrament. He had also believed in the old ways, the bayou magic that his grandmother whispered about, the spirits that lived in the cypress trees, the things that watched from the water. Respect the swamp, his father had told him, but don't fear it, fear gives it power. René had tried to follow that advice. He had fished the bayou, hunted in the marsh, walked the narrow paths through the cypress knees. He had seen things, strange lights, strange sounds, strange movements in the corner of his eye, but he had never let himself be afraid. Not until his father died. Antoine Thibaudaux had been 58 when the cancer took him. A slow, wasting death that lasted 2 years. René had watched his father fade, had held his hand at the end, had buried him in the family plot behind St. Augustine's. And then he had stopped believing. Not all at once. It was a gradual process, a slow erosion of faith that began with grief and ended with emptiness. He stopped going to Mass, stopped praying, stopped observing the sacraments. He told himself it was temporary, that he would return to the church when he had healed, when the pain had faded, when he could feel God's presence again. But he never did. And 7 years later, on the first Friday of Lent, the emptiness he had created was filled by something else. Something with red eyes. Something that had been waiting. The first signs appeared in the winter of 2015. René was 40 years old, tending bar at Thibaudaux's Landing, living alone in the cabin his grandfather had built. He was lonely, but he told himself he was content. He had his work, his routine, his small pleasures. He didn't notice the changes at first, the way the shadows seemed to move when he wasn't looking, the way the swamp sounds seemed to form patterns, almost like voices, the way his dreams had become vivid, disturbing, filled with images of teeth and claws and red eyes. He told himself it was stress, age, the natural decline of a man who had spent too many years drinking too much whiskey. Then the footprints appeared. It was a Tuesday morning early, before the sun had fully risen. René had woken with a headache, a hangover from the night before. He had stumbled to the kitchen to make coffee, and there they were. Footprints in the mud on his kitchen floor. They were shaped like human feet, but wrong, too long. The toes splayed at impossible angles, and they were wet, still wet, as if whoever had made them had just left. René checked the doors, locked, the windows locked. There was no way anyone could have gotten in. But the footprints were there. He cleaned them up, told himself it was a dream, a hallucination, a trick of the light. He went to work, served drinks, laughed with customers, pretended everything was normal. That night he placed a chair against his bedroom door, just in case. The footprints didn't return, not that week, but other things did. Whispers in the dark, movements in the corner of his eye, the feeling of being watched constantly by something that had no name. He started drinking more, sleeping less, seeing things that weren't there. Or maybe they were there. Maybe they had always been there, and he was only now learning to see. On Ash Wednesday, 7 years after his father's death, René stood outside St. Augustine's and watched the faithful enter to receive their ashes. He wanted to go in, wanted to kneel to pray, to receive the mark of mortality on his forehead, wanted to believe again. But he couldn't. The door seemed to resist him, to push him away. He could feel the presence inside, the holy, the sacred, the divine, and it burned him, rejected him. He was empty, hollow, a vessel with nothing inside. And nature abhors a vacuum. That night the thing with red eyes came for the first time. René was in his cabin alone, the fire burning low. He heard a sound outside, a scratching at the door like claws on wood. He grabbed his shotgun, approached the door, looked through the window. It was standing in the yard, tall and thin, with limbs that bent wrong and a head that tilted at an impossible angle. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, like embers in a dying fire. It saw him, smiled, raised one long finger to its lips. SHHH. Renee fired. The shotgun blast shattered the window, tore through the screen, hit nothing. The thing was gone. But it would be back. It always came back. The 7 years between the first appearance and the final transformation were the longest of Renee's life. He tried to fight it, tried to reclaim his faith, to close the door he had opened. He went to Mass, went to confession, went to counseling. He prayed until his knees ached, read scripture until his eyes burned, did everything he could think of to drive the thing away. But it was always there, watching, waiting, counting. He learned its patterns. It appeared on Fridays during Lent. It appeared on the full moon. It appeared when he was alone, when he was vulnerable, when he was afraid. It fed on his fear, grew stronger with every nightmare, every hallucination, every moment of doubt. He started seeing others, the transformed, the infected, people in town whose eyes glowed faintly in the dark, whose movements were too fluid, too graceful. He realized he wasn't alone, that the curse had spread, was spreading, would continue to spread. He tried to warn people, tried to tell them what was happening. They thought he was crazy, an alcoholic, a man grieving his father, his faith, his life. Maybe he was. But he was also right. The thing with red eyes was real, the curse was real, and it was coming for them all. In the 7th year, Renee made a decision. He would stop fighting, stop resisting. He would embrace the curse, become its host, try to control it from within. He didn't know that was exactly what it wanted. On the first night of Lent, 7 years after his father's death, Renee invited the thing in. He opened his door, stepped aside, and said the words, "I'm ready." The thing smiled, entered, and Renee Thibodeaux was never the same. The curse was older than Christianity, older than the Cajuns who settled Louisiana, older than the Native Americans who lived here before. It was a thing of the swamp, a spirit of hunger and emptiness that had existed since the first life crawled from the primordial muck. It didn't have a name, didn't need one, it simply was. It fed on faith, on the empty space where belief had been, on the doubt that crept into human hearts when God seemed silent. It didn't create the emptiness, it simply moved in, occupied the space, made itself at home. And once it was in, it was very hard to get out. The curse worked through infection, through touch, through proximity. It spread like a virus, seeking hosts, multiplying, transforming. But it also worked through choice, through the moment when a human decided to open the door, to invite it in, to become a vessel. That was Renee's sin, not the broken Lent, not the lost faith, but the choice. The moment when he said, "I'm ready," and stepped aside. He had invited it, welcomed it, made himself a home for something that should have stayed in the dark. And now, on the 101st night, he would pay the price. Father Dufresne had known about the curse since he was a boy. His grandfather had been a priest before him, and his grandfather before that. The Dufresnes had served St. Augustine's for 5 generations, and they had all known about the thing in the swamp. They had fought it, contained it, kept it from spreading beyond Lacroix Parish. But they had never destroyed it, couldn't destroy it. It was too old, too strong, too deeply rooted in the land itself. The best we can do, Father Dufresne's grandfather had told him, is manage it, keep it contained, prevent it from consuming everything. And when we fail, then we start over, new priests, new strategies, new sacrifices. Father Dufresne had failed, he knew that. The curse had spread beyond anything his predecessors had seen. Half the town was infected. The 101st night was hours away. But he had one last strategy, one last sacrifice. Renee Thibodeaux, the 7th son of a 7th son, the original host, the source of the current outbreak. If Renee could be convinced to take the curse, all of it, into himself, he could become a prison. A vessel that contained the infection, prevented it from spreading, held it in check. He would die, of course he would die. The curse would consume him, body and soul. But the town would be saved. It was a hard choice, a cruel choice, to ask a man to sacrifice himself for others. But Father Dufresne had made harder choices, had done crueler things, all in the name of containment, all in the name of the greater good. He found Renee in the confessional on the morning of the 100th night. The man looked terrible, thin, pale, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. "I know what you're going to ask," Renee said, "and—" "I'll do it," Father Dufresne blinked, "just like that." "Just like that." Renee's voice was flat, resigned. "I've been thinking about it, about what I am, what I've done, the people I've hurt, Lisette, Marie, the whole town. It's not your fault, the curse is my fault. I invited it in, I let it use me. I could have fought harder, resisted longer, found another way, but I didn't. I took the easy path, and now everyone pays the price. So you'll sacrifice yourself?" "I'll try," Renee met his eyes. "But I don't know if it will work. The curse is strong, ancient. It might be stronger than me." "It might. And if it is, if I can't hold it? Then we start over. New strategies, new sacrifices." Father Dufresne placed his hand on Renee's shoulder. "But I believe you can do this. I believe you're strong enough." "Why?" "Because you still care, still feel guilt, still want to save others. The curse hasn't taken that from you, and as long as you hold on to your humanity, you have a chance." Renee nodded. "When do we start?" "Tonight at midnight, the 101st night." "I'll be ready." He wasn't. No one could be ready for what was coming, but he would try, for Lisette, for Marie, for the town. For himself. Renee found Marie in her cabin on the afternoon of the 100th night. She was packing, preparing to flee, to run, to save herself and her baby. "Don't go," he said. "I have to, the curse. I can end it tonight, but I need you here." "Why?" "Because you're the only one who understands, the only one who knows what it's like to be infected, to be changed, to fight against something that's inside you." Marie sat down. "What are you going to do?" "Take it, all of it, into myself, become a prison for the curse." "That will kill you." "Probably. And if it doesn't, then I become something else, something that can hold it, control it, keep it from spreading." "A monster." "A warden." Renee knelt before her. "I need you to promise me something. If I survive, if I become something else, don't let me hurt anyone, don't let me loose. Find a way to stop me." "How?" "Fire. The old stories say fire can destroy the curse. If I become dangerous, if I lose control, burn me." "Renee, promise me." She looked at him, at the man she had once loved, the man who had infected her, the man who was trying to save her. "I promise." "Thank you." He stood up. "One more thing, the baby. If I don't survive, if the curse takes me completely, take her far away. Change her name, hide her." "Why?" "Because she carries part of me, part of the curse. It might be dormant, might never activate, but if it does, I'll protect her." "I know you will." He kissed her forehead. "Goodbye, Marie." "Goodbye, Renee." He left her there in the cabin, with her packing and her fear and her unborn child. He didn't know if he would see her again. He didn't know if he would see anyone again. But he had made his choice. And now, finally, he would find out if it was the right one. It began at midnight. Renee was in the confessional, Father Dufresne beside him. The church was empty, the survivors hidden in the basement, waiting for dawn. "Are you ready?" the priest asked. "No, but let's do it anyway." Father Dufresne began to pray. Ancient words in languages older than the church. Words of binding, of containment, of sacrifice. Renee felt the curse stirring, felt it realizing what was happening, felt it fighting back. The pain was immediate, excruciating, like his body was being torn apart from the inside. He screamed. The sound echoed through the church, through the town, through the swamp. And the curse came. It flowed into him from everywhere, from the infected in the town, from the transformed in the swamp, from the thing with red eyes that had been his companion for 7 years. It filled him, consumed him, became him. He was no longer Renee Thibodeaux. He was the curse, the vessel, the prison. And he held it. Through the pain, through the transformation, through the feeling of his humanity being stripped away, he held it. He didn't let it spread, didn't let it infect, didn't let it consume. He held it, and then slowly the pain faded, the transformation completed. He was something new, something old, something that had never existed before. He opened his eyes. The world was different, sharper, clearer. He could see the life force in every living thing, the darkness in every shadow, the connections that bound everything together. He could see the curse, inside him, writhing, hungry. But contained. It worked, Father Dufresne whispered. For now. Renee's voice was different, layered, inhuman. But it won't hold forever, nothing holds forever. How long? Days, weeks, maybe longer. He stood up, his movements fluid and strange. I need to go before I hurt someone. Where? The swamp, the deep swamp, where no one goes, where I can't hurt anyone. Renee. Don't follow me, don't look for me if I come back, if I lose control. Fire. Yes, he met the priest's eyes. Thank you, Father, for everything. God be with you. I don't think God has anything to do with this. He walked out of the church into the night. The swamp called to him, the darkness welcomed him, the curse sang in his blood. He was no longer human, but he was still Renee. Still fighting. Still holding on. For as long as he could. Renee spent his last days in the deep swamp. He built a shelter from cypress branches and Spanish moss. He hunted alligators, snakes, the creatures of the bayou. He ate raw meat, drank black water, became more animal than human. But he held the curse, kept it contained, prevented it from spreading. He felt the others die, the transformed in town, reverting to human, passing peacefully in their sleep. The infected, shedding the curse like a skin, waking up confused but free. He felt Marie give birth, felt the baby's first cry bright and clear and human. He felt hope, but he also felt the curse fighting, struggling, trying to break free. It was strong, ancient, patient. And he was only one man. On the 60th day, he knew he couldn't hold it anymore. The curse was too strong, his will too weak, his humanity too faded. He had one choice left. He walked to the gas pool, the place where the earth bled methane. He stood at the edge, looking at the water, the trees, the sky. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything. He lit the fire. The explosion consumed him. The curse screamed, fought, tried to escape. But he held it tight, even as his body burned, even as his mind shattered, even as his soul was consumed. He held it. And then finally he let go. The fire burned for 3 days. When it died, the swamp was changed. The curse was gone. Or so they thought. Years passed. Marie raised her daughter, Hope, far from Lacroix Parish. They lived in New Orleans, then Houston, then California. Always moving, always hiding, always afraid. But the curse never came, never activated, never spread. Hope grew up normal, human, happy. She never knew about her father, never knew about the curse, never knew about the sacrifice that had saved her life. Marie told herself that was for the best, that some secrets were better kept, that the past should stay buried. But she never forgot. She never forgot Renee, never forgot the 101 nights, never forgot the thing with red eyes, and she never forgot the pennies. 13 copper coins arranged in a circle, protection, warning, promise. She kept them in a box, hidden in her closet, touched them sometimes late at night when the memories came flooding back. "Thank you," she would whisper, "for saving us." And somewhere in the ashes of the swamp, something stirred. Something patient, something waiting, for the next 101 nights, for the next host, for the next time the door was opened. The curse was never truly destroyed, only contained, only delayed. And it was very, very patient. The Thibaudaux family had lived in Lacroix Parish for 200 years. They had come from France fleeing the revolution, seeking a new life in the New World. They had found the bayou, the swamp, the cypress trees, had built a home, a life, a legacy. But they had also found something else. The thing in the swamp, the curse, the hunger. The first René Thibaudaux had made a bargain, had traded his faith for prosperity, his soul for land, had opened the door and invited it in. He had become the first host, the first vessel, the first to carry the curse. And he had passed it to his children, his children's children, generation after generation, the curse flowing through the Thibaudaux bloodline like water through a river. Sometimes it slept, dormant, inactive, waiting for the right conditions. Sometimes it woke, spread, consumed. The family had learned to manage it, to contain it, to prevent it from destroying everything. They had built the church, St. Augustine's, a place of power, of protection, of prayer. They had established the rituals, the 13 pennies, the iron nails, the salt lines. They had trained the priests, the Dufresnes, the guardians, the watchers. They had kept the curse at bay for 2 centuries. Until René, the 7th son of a 7th son, born on the winter solstice, the perfect host. His broken Lent hadn't caused the curse, it had simply activated it, woken it, given it the opportunity it had been waiting for. And now, on the 101st night, it would reach its full power. Unless René could stop it. Unless he could become the prison, the vessel, the sacrifice. Unless he could end the Thibaudaux legacy, once and for all. Father Dufresne had prepared the ritual carefully. It was old magic, older than the church, older than Christianity, older than the Thibaudaux family itself. It had been passed down through generations of Dufresne priests, from father to son, from mentor to student, from guardian to guardian. The ritual of containment, the binding of the curse, the creation of a prison. It required a willing host, someone who would accept the curse freely, completely, without reservation. It required sacrifice. The host would die, body and soul, consumed by the curse they contained. It required power, faith, will, determination, the strength to hold the curse, to prevent it from escaping, to maintain the prison. René had the willingness. He had accepted his fate, had embraced his role, was ready to die. He had the sacrifice, he would give everything, his life, his soul, his existence. But did he have the power? That was the question, the uncertainty, the risk. If he wasn't strong enough, the curse would break free, would consume him and escape, would spread faster than before. If he was too strong, he might become something else, a god, a monster, a tyrant. The balance was delicate, precise, dangerous. Father Dufresne could only guide, could only prepare, could only pray. The rest was up to René. René spent the day before the 101st night in prayer, not formal prayer, not the liturgy of the church, something older, deeper. He prayed to the swamp, to the bayou, to the cypress trees and the Spanish moss. He prayed to his father, his mother, his sister. He prayed to the thing with red eyes, the curse, the hunger. He acknowledged it, accepted it, welcomed it, but he also set boundaries, limits, conditions. "I will be your prison," he whispered, "but you will not be my master. I will contain you, but you will not consume me. I will hold you, but you will not escape." The curse stirred, responded, agreed. It was willing to be contained. For a time, it was patient, it could wait. But it would try to escape, would test the prison, would seek weakness, cracks, opportunities. Renee knew this, accepted it, prepared for it. He spent the afternoon in the swamp, walking the paths, touching the trees, feeling the pulse of the land. He was becoming part of it, part of the bayou, part of the curse. His humanity was fading, his identity dissolving. He was becoming something else. But he held on to his memories, his love, his purpose. He was doing this for Lisette, for Marie, for the baby, for the town, the people, the world. He was doing this because it was right, because someone had to. Because he was the only one who could. Night fell. Renee walked to the church. The town was quiet. The infected were gathering, drawn by the curse, by the power, by the promise of transformation. They didn't know what was coming, didn't know that their transformation would be their end. Renee felt sorry for them. Pity, compassion. They were victims like him, like Lisette, like everyone the curse had touched. They didn't deserve to die, but they couldn't be allowed to live, not as they were, not as monsters. He entered the church. Father Dufresne was waiting. "It's time," the priest said. "I know." They walked to the confessional, the ritual space, the place of transformation. "Are you ready?" Father Dufresne asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Then let us begin." The priest began to pray, ancient words, words of power, words of binding. Renee knelt, closed his eyes, opened himself. The curse came. It flowed into him like water, like fire, like life itself. He felt it fill him, consume him, become him. He felt the others, the infected, the transformed. Their curses flowing into him, merging with his, becoming one. He felt Lisette, her fear, her anger, her love. He felt Marie, her strength, her determination, her hope. He felt the baby, pure, uncorrupted, full of potential. He felt the town, the land, the swamp. He felt everything, and he held it. Through the pain, through the transformation, through the feeling of his self dissolving, he held it. He was the prison, the vessel, the sacrifice. He was the curse, and he would hold it. When it was over, Renee was no longer human. He stood in the confessional, his body changed, his mind expanded, his soul elsewhere. He could see the curse, inside him, writhing, hungry. He could see the infected, their curses flowing into him, contained, controlled. He could see the town, the people, the fear and hope and life. He could see everything. "It worked," Father Dufresne whispered. "For now." Renee's voice was different, layered, inhuman, but it won't hold forever. "How long?" "I don't know, days, weeks, years." "What happens when it fails?" "Then I die, and the curse is released. And if you succeed, if you hold it, then I live as this, as something else." Father Dufresne nodded. "Go to the swamp, the deep swamp where you can't hurt anyone." "I will." "And Renee." "Yes. Thank you for everything." Renee smiled, or tried to. His face didn't work quite right anymore. "Thank me when it's over, when the curse is truly destroyed, when the world is safe." "Will that day ever come?" "I don't know, but I have to hope." He walked out of the church, into the night, into the swamp. The curse was contained. The town was saved. The 101st night had passed, but the battle was far from over. It had only just begun. Renee spent his first week as the prison in the deep swamp. He built a shelter, hunted, ate, slept. He learned to control the curse, to hold it, to prevent it from escaping. It fought him, tested him, tried to find weaknesses. It showed him visions of power, of domination, of a world where he ruled, where the curse was his weapon, his tool, his servant. He refused. It showed him visions of peace, of oblivion, of an end to the struggle, the pain, the fear. He refused. It showed him visions of his family, his friends, the people he had saved. It told him they were suffering, dying, being consumed by the curse he had failed to contain. He refused to believe it. He held on. Through the visions, through the temptations, through the endless grinding pressure of containing something that wanted to be free, He held on. And slowly he learned. Learned to live with the curse, to coexist, to maintain the prison without being consumed. It was possible, difficult but possible. He could do this. He could hold the curse. Forever. They came to him on the 7th day. First Marie, carrying the baby, Hope. She's beautiful, Renee said. She is. Marie held the child close. She has your eyes. She has her mother's strength. They talked for hours about the past, the future, the curse. Marie told him about the town, the recovery, the people returning to normal. They're calling you a hero, she said. I'm not a hero, I'm a prison. You're both. When she left, Renee felt the curse stir, felt it reach for her, for the baby. He held it back, barely. The curse was getting stronger, testing him, pushing him. He had to be careful, had to maintain control. Had to hold on. On the 30th day, the curse broke free. Not completely, not fully, but enough. Renee felt it escape his control, felt it reach out, touch someone, a hiker lost in the swamp, alone, vulnerable. The curse infected him, transformed him, made him a monster. Renee felt it happen, felt the man's fear, his pain, his transformation. He pulled the curse back, contained it, restored control, but the damage was done. The hiker was infected, changed. Renee had to kill him. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, harder than becoming the prison, harder than containing the curse. He tracked the hiker, found him, ended his suffering, then he burned the body, and he wept. For the man he had killed, for the monster he had become, for the failure that had allowed the curse to escape. He knew then that he couldn't hold it forever, knew that eventually the curse would break free, knew that he would have to end it. Before it was too late. On the 60th day, Renee made his decision. He couldn't hold the curse. Not forever, not completely. It was too strong, too ancient, too hungry. Eventually it would escape, would spread, would consume. Unless he ended it. Unless he destroyed himself, the curse, the prison. Unless he made the ultimate sacrifice. He walked to the gas pool, the place where the earth bled methane, where fire could consume everything. He stood at the edge, looked at the water, the trees, the sky. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything. He lit the fire. The explosion was blinding. The fire consumed him. The curse screamed, fought, tried to escape. But he held it tight, held it as he burned. He was the prison, the vessel, the sacrifice, and he would not let go. Not until the end. Not until the curse was destroyed. Not until it was over. He held on. And then finally he let go. The fire burned for 3 days. When it died, the swamp was changed. The curse was gone, or so they thought. But the curse was patient, ancient, resourceful. It had survived for millennia. It would survive this. A fragment remained, a seed, a potential waiting, watching, growing for the next host. For the next 101 nights, for the next time the door was opened, the curse would return. It always did. Forever. Thank you for listening to tonight's stories. If you enjoyed them, please leave a like and subscribe.